All right, toast, toast, toast. Here we go. What's up, buddy? How you doing? Are we good? Shouts out to everybody out there joining us. We're doing a little Friday night streaming. It's called We Do a Little Friday Night Streaming. We're going to talk about Hereditary tonight. And if everybody can welcome the real Cooter Brown at Digital Minefield. Hopefully everybody has subbed to his channel. Please go over there. The link is right there in the title. Digital Minefield, real Cooter Brown. This is our friend Matty, of course. He's had me on his show many, many times. I've had him here a couple times, of course, and I'm super glad to have him here tonight because I really wanted him to check out this film. And Matty, what do you have to say? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well for the most part. Can't complain too much. It's good to be back. I think what was the last one we did here? Was it True Detective season 4? I think.
Yeah, we did True. Yes, I think that was the last one. Of course, we did that. We did. What else did we do? Did we do?
I was on for the Manson, for part of the Manson one. I was on part of the Caddyshack, and I feel like there was another one. That may be it. But it's good to be back. I caught the anybody who didn't catch the segment on was it State of the Nation on TNT Radio.live. That was a really good
TNT Radio.live. Yes. Thank you, sir.
With Hesher, and his co-host name escapes me. But I also wanted to say, just real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I stumbled across, I didn't even realize you'd done it, but I stumbled across the segment you did with Johnny Vedmore, like about a week and a half ago. And I stumbled across on his YouTube channel. He's a smart guy. I've been following his work for a while and really enjoyed y'all's discussion. It was a lot packed into 10 minutes, and particularly the thermonuclear war part of the discussion. I thought was very interesting. So yeah, everybody should check that out if you haven't. A lot of good content going on over there at Today's News Talk.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate that. Yeah, good plug. That's awesome, man. Thank you. Johnny Vedmore. Shouts out to Johnny Vedmore. Shouts out to Ruckus who hooked that up. Yeah, we talked about, like you said, thermonuclear war games, right? Dr. Stephen Falcon, right? 1983. Matthew Broderick, right? The only way to win is not to play, right? Chess, checkers, global thermonuclear war, Cheyenne Mountain, and it's incredible actually how like relevant that still is. You would think that would be just like totally boomerized into the past, but it comes up every couple of years. Of course, it came up during the Big Nine, right, with the DEF CON levels. Remember the DEF CON levels? Right.
Yeah, that kind of took over for the Doomsday. I mean, the Doomsday Clock is still around, but that kind of replaced sort of the Doomsday Clock in terms of like people expecting impending apocalypse.
That's right. Yeah, we're at threat level midnight, right? Terror level amber. I remember the colors were really weird. It's like we're at level amber, level fuchsia, level aquamarine is like a better color than level standard brown, but it was also like a worse level. DEFCON, what's worse, DEFCON 1 or 5? I guess DEFCON 1 is the worst, right?
I think DEFCON 1 is the worst. They're probably like trying to just do the psyop, and they're looking like over at Michael Aquino, who's combing his eyebrows, and they're like, "What do we do? What's a good color to freak people out?" He's
like Stygian black. The color of my uniform in the ritual at Babelsberg. No, they're looking at Dabney Coleman and the Whopper. This is a supercomputer. It's called the Whopper. Remember the computer in war games, the Whopper. This boy hacked into the Whopper. It's funny because Matthew Broderick is a hacker in 2 movies, that and Ferris Bueller. He hacks into his grades.
I've actually never seen Ferris Bueller.
What?
Yeah, I've never watched it.
Okay, first of all, that you need to watch it. Second of all, it's it is what it is. There's one part that annoys me, and it's like the line everybody. Well, of course they remember the Bueller, right? But the other line, the deep line is like John Lennon said, right? Something about it's okay to be me or whatever. And it's right after he like weirdly gets out of the shower and he's breaking the fourth wall. I've never liked that particular line in the movie, and it almost ruins the entire movie, even though it kind of sets the theme because he really does play that kind of character. But the best part is Cameron when he's in his neo dead tech postmodernistic bullshit house in the woods, lying in bed like sick, and he says, "Let my Cameron go." That sounds super lame and cringe now that I say it, but it's cool when you watch it. It's actually a good line. But yeah, we're not here to talk about Matthew Broderick, who I saw once in New York.
Was he with SJP?
No, she was Next Stop Hollywood. Ew. No. No. I was in I was in the West Village, and I was walking along, and I saw him from like 200 yards away. Very noticeable because he was wearing shorts, an unbuttoned, like button-down shirt, and like a Jansport backpack, and he looked like a 45-year-old like man baby. It was like skipping school, but it was clearly Matthew Broderick. And he was kind of like galumphing along. And when he walked past me, I was like looking at him, and he looked at me, and he was like, and we kind of stared each other down. And that's because he sensed my alpha energy. He sensed my alpha power, right? Just like that. Remember that wild boar on the trail, right? He sensed my alpha power, and he turned around and he said, "Not today, mister." No, that did actually happen, though. That's my brush with fame, Matthew Broderick. The other. Should be back in a second, folks. Hold on, I got it. There we go. Should be back.
We're good.
Should be back.
I think.
Yeah, it's probably just the cyber polygon from last night. They're trying to, shut it all down. Is that when I lived in Northern Ireland, Matthew Broderick is notorious on the whole island. If you bring up his name at all, the first person that you bring it up to will tell you the story of what he did one time in Ireland. Do you know this brief factoid about Matthew Broderick?
No, is he Irish? I mean, I know he's American, but is he ethnically Irish?
Well, he was in Ireland, I guess, for staying at a castle or whatever. I don't know what happened, but something allegedly happened where he was in a motor vehicle, and there were two people, and then there were one. And
yes, I did remember. I remember reading about that years ago.
Right, and then kept going and was like, "I better get on the plane," and then just left, and then they had to deal with the aftermath. I don't know the specifics, but yeah, there you go. See, I told you, Crispy would know. Crispy would know. Crispy is the high protector, right, of the Gaelic Islands. So, but allegedly, right? But everybody knows it there. As Norm said, allegedly, but for real.
I was going to make a joke, but no, we're not going to go. Not about that. It was about had to do with Dr. Who was it? Crunchy
Kevorkian?
Jackson. But no, we're not going to go there.
Norm said, "Why do people keep going to Dr. Kevorkian? His nickname is Dr. Death. Don't they know this is not a good doctor?" Do you know in the chat? Do you know who Dr. Kevorkian is? Dr. Death. Infamous 90s guy, right? You didn't like what was going on in your life. You went to him, and he helped you go. He helped you not have to deal with it anymore, I guess. One of those infamous 90s characters who maybe we will cover if we ever do our Uber 90s stream on all the pop culture characters and the Atlanta thing, the Timothy McVeigh thing, all the events, right? Jethro is the expert on all that. But that aside, folks, let's get to it. Tonight we are covering the movie Hereditary from 2018. It's good that we've had a little bit of banter here beforehand, because this is first of all, this is not a funny movie at all.
There's nothing.
It's not a comedy.
Yeah, it's good to get some levity in, because even a lot of movies, even if it's a more serious movie, you will get some moments of comic relief, where there's something take The Departed, for example. It's a very serious movie, but the scenes with Alec Baldwin and Mark Wahlberg are very funny, because they're playing it as they're like serious characters, but the way they play it's very well done. And so that's just one example. Scream is like a horror movie, but there's comedy throughout it. This movie, it really never lets up, especially once it really gets going. There's no really room to breathe, so to speak. There's no laughs to be had.
Right. Yeah, the movie I would compare it to would its companion piece would obviously be The Witch from 2015. I think it's an A24 movie, and I often confuse the directors of these two. They're so similar. but they have a, consistent kind of crossover theme. They're both, blatantly the occult elements override it. I mean, it's not just in the subtext. This is the text of the work. And but that's also kind of a nuanced take that has some complexity to it. But even The Witch, has some like scenes with a little bit of lightness, right? When the twins are skipping along, singing to Black Phillip. It's there's something there. It's not comic relief, but it's like a little bit of a break, but actually that serves to make it even worse for what happens afterwards. Have you seen The Witch?
I saw part of it. I need to finish. I watched this one on Max, and I saw the Witch. It came up in the search when I was looking for Hereditary. So I mean, the lore, that film has great lore in terms of the making of it, like with Black Phillip and the director saying like, don't ever get a real goat to play in a movie again because Black Phillip is so difficult to deal with. And then Black Phillip's handler was like, no, he actually did pretty good in a movie as far as goats go. So it's it's pretty but no, I need to finish that one.
Yeah, spoiler, if you want a goat in your movie who transforms into Lucifer, like literally, then you can only expect, this guy's going to be a little wily, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's also the disturbing parts in that movie are in a way like much worse than this, but they both exist in kind of the same world because Hereditary, which is Ari Aster, right? Ari Aster. Ari, you know what I'm tired of? These directors from London, right? Ari Aster. Go watch the Sam Hyde Ari Aster take, by the way. If you haven't seen that, that's what I'm quoting people.
Was it Robert Eggers that did The Witch?
Yes. Okay, so he did The Witch, and then which one did what I just covered, Midsommar? That was
Ari Aster as well.
That was Ari Aster, and then The Lighthouse. Watch them spill your beans. The Lighthouse was Ari Aster. No. The guy who did Hereditary did Midsommar. That's all I know. Right.
Was the Lighthouse one with Willem Dafoe, the black and white one?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson. Make them spill your beans. It's the movie about a Starbucks mermaid, like Lovecraftian squidgy demon, while the two guys sit there and coom in a lighthouse in a like outside of time.
Okay.
And I thought I thought that one was there was a lot of hype about that leading up to it, and it didn't work. I think it didn't work because they doing too much, as they say. And the central, like the one central location in that ended up being it took away from the film instead of like being something that would add to it. In my opinion, it probably needs a rewatch, but but then again, Robert Pattinson, I like him. I think he's, kind of underrated. Willem Dafoe is obviously, wake up, Ahmed! Your easy days are over, pal. In that movie I just covered last night, The Card Counter. Willem Dafoe is like, par excellence. He's always great. He's a great theatrical actor on film. And, I think that this movie is interesting because, since we're talking about actors, the cast, first of all, let's just start with basic level. The cast is fantastic. Toni Collette plays the main character, the lady. She is unbelievable. This is not easy. It's a very complex role, and she is actually terrifying in the movie. What's his name? What's the name of her husband? Not Aidan Quinn. Gabriel Byrne, right, plays her husband. Gabriel Byrne has a pedigree in these types of movies. Of course, remember he played Satan in Jethro. What did he play in? Was it not The Sixth Day? Was it the Schwarzenegger movie? What's the Schwarzenegger movie about the Antichrist? Is that the last day, end of days?
I think it's
I don't know. One of those. So he's in that.
Jethro
and then the two children, the older the son in the movie. I haven't seen it, but he played Dzhokhar Tsarnaev in the Boston Strong movie with Mark Wahlberg. Which
Yes, I
once you
did.
know that, he looks like exactly like that guy, doesn't he?
Yeah, I read up a little about the cast before, like while I was doing just doing a little bit of research, and I was like, that guy looks exactly like Joe Carr. That was interesting. And the dad, Gabriel Byrne, he was fantastic. He might have that might be the best performance in the film. He was very good. I mean, I think I'd seen him in something. Wow, it was like one or two things before. I hadn't seen him in many things, but yeah, he was very good. The woman who will become a key figure
Yeah.
in the film, who plays the woman that Annie, to Tony Collette's character, meets at the grief anonymous meeting. She was very good as well. I thought her performance was excellent. And the mother, Ellen Lee, I don't know the actress name. You know what I read the first thing I thought when I saw her when she was like in the coffin? I was like, she looks like Mae Musk, like Elon Musk's mom. They
She
kind of had her made up to, because I looked up photos of her. She looks a little bit different than that. I was like, I kind of wonder. I was like, because she certainly has a
Holy
resemblance
cannoli.
to
Yeah,
May.
dude. Good catch, man. You're right. You you are right. That's yes. Yeah, she really does. She does. And that's
Hmm.
interesting because um she's very normal looking, but also there's something that's like extremely unnerving about her, even though you just see her in still shots, right? Even in like the portrait of her, you see her and you go, what is wrong? There's something off and disturbing about this. Even her picture there. And that's a good catch. That's a good catch. Yeah, she's fantastic. All she does is just, come into frame. Her whole acting bit is in the backstory of the film, mainly. So that's great acting for like, just appearing in like 3 frames. The like you said, the gang stalking, self-help, therapy slash, friend woman whom we're going to learn about is like so fantastic in this movie that, I kind of have a hard time separating her from the fact that she's probably this in real life. Right. I mean, how could you like she plays this extremely convincingly. And I've seen her in other films and she's great at playing these roles, even though she's a great character actor. I don't know her name. Um, she also is clearly, a theatrically trained actress. She's very good in this. But Toni Collette, who is Australian, by the way, the main lady, and her Irish husband, in Quinn in this film, both playing, this is an American family.
Hmm.
This movie just right off the bat. Have you guys seen this in the chat? The chat's over here. That's why I'm looking over here.
Oh,
Uh,
gotcha.
have you guys? Because I can't see it here. Let me see if I
Hmm.
can pull it up here because we're
There's
on
a way to pull up
StreamYard.
on StreamYard, but I go back and forth.
Shouts, yeah, shouts out to everybody in the chat right there. Shouts out to Jethro, of course. Jason. Shouts out to Mella, our musician. Shouts out to who's that? Who's that? Who's RIP? Shouts out to RIP. There's Marksky. What's up, Marksky? OBG. Everybody in here tonight. Thank you. What? Okay, let me just set the plan here. If anybody needs some structure, what we're gonna do here is instead of uh, going through the film chronologically, right, scene by scene, and looking at it in order, what I think we're going to do is do more of a kind of, generalized analysis of the film as a whole while using specific examples as sort of what would be text evidence, right?
Yeah.
Um, this film we could do it that way, but there are a lot of great analyses online. I mean, of course, at the top, I think of the hereditary analysis sort of chain, or at least first. Of course, JD did an analysis of this, but Rob Ager did one. This was like right after the movie came out, 2018, and I watched it when he first put this out. He's done a few of them on Hereditary, and his takes are great because this movie is a horror movie, but it kind of defies a genre. It's more than that. It's a psychological look into a family. It's an occult drama. It's an initiation. It's a dark, inverted, religious apotheosis climax.
Hmm.
It is really initiatory because when you watch it, it's unlike really anything I've seen except maybe The Witch and Rosemary's Baby.
Hmm.
It's not it is supernatural horror, but it is not it's not like ghouls and goblins, it's not poltergeist, it's not what is it? The Devil's Advocate, like demons, with CGI. It is much more effective, and I just think it's done on a tight, higher level than those things.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of
And
the sorry.
no, yes, go ahead, give us your take.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna actually one thing I did want to say about the actress who played the self-help guru medium woman. I don't know her name. I can't remember. I looked it up earlier, but there's a certain type of female actress that I really appreciate, which is somebody like her, somebody like a Kathy Bates, somebody like a Margot Martindale, where they have and they're probably all very nice people in real life, but they have this kind of thing where they sort of seem they can play these characters where they're sort of like, oh, sort of unassuming and sweet and kind of down home a bit at first, but then they can turn into like being very dark characters who are capable of pretty significant amounts of evil, which is very interesting because you don't really see. They're the only three I can think of that I've really seen
Can I
really
get you
play
anything, Paul? You didn't finish your
that.
chicken McNuggets, Mr. Man. You didn't finish your cock-a-doodle chicken McNuggets, Mr. Man. Yeah, Kathy Bates in Misery. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, and Margot Martindale, great example when she was in Justified. Was it season 3, I think, where she's just kind of this woman who's running a store, and then she's actually just like, like crushing her own son's hand with a hammer. I mean, it was just like she was total psycho.
Yeah, it is.
But
I agree with you. I think the dramatic irony with that is effective. It's like when you watch what Snowpiercer, right? And it's got Tilda
Mhm.
Swinton. Is my volume okay, you guys? Is my audio okay? Because it keeps like going up and down and it resets. So if it's not, if you need us turned up, just let me know. Um, Tilda Swinton in that movie, it's like, yeah, she's playing this woman who's like, hello, travelers in the back, and she's, there to give them their rations, but she's clearly like a ghoul.
Mhm.
I trust her for a second. Kathy Bates in Misery, even in the book, is, described as the dragon lady, but you are immediately also off put by her because she hoists James Caan up onto her shoulder and you know, like rucksacks him out of a gully, right, in a car wreck. And then you start to think, well, is she the one who caused it in the first place?
Hmm.
So by the time you get to the hobbling scene, you're like, oh yeah, no, she's going to do the worst thing you can imagine. It's going to be
Yeah.
creative and sick and weird. Um, you know, but this film, with this woman, the first time, the initial time that I watched Hereditary with this woman we're talking about, who plays the kind of outside friend who meets Tony Collette's character. What were your feelings about her? Like, what did you initially think? Were your kind of alarm bells going off? Did you suspect something? Did your what you suspected, did it end up being worse than what you suspected, or could you not have imagined like what happens by the end of this movie? What were your thoughts?
I was not expecting where it went, and I thought actually the character. And this is one of the things I thought why she played it so brilliantly is because she genuinely seemed like someone who was kind of sweet and caring and genuinely concerned. I mean, the way that. And then you can kind of see in hindsight, like, okay, maybe she came on a little bit strong, but you don't really, I mean, at least I didn't really get that right out of the gate. I was like, no, this is just a character who's, maybe like a side character or somebody. Because I'd read nothing about the like I'd heard of the movie. I didn't listen to Jay's breakdown of it, and so I knew nothing about it going into it, and so I didn't know any of the characters where this was going. So I was kind of just taking it as it came, and she was yeah, just seemed like a normal, friendly type of person, which I liked because there were some things in the movie which I'm really into foreshadowing. I always appreciate that in literature and in movies as well. But the problem with this, they were one of my criticisms of the movie is they were a little bit heavy-handed on the foreshadowing. And because, it's like at the beginning when the Annie and Steve's daughter is eating a Hershey bar, they're like, oh, does it have nuts in it? And then, later on they're at the party and this girl's like chopping up walnuts for some reason, like some odd reason at a party. And then, she eats the cake and it's like, okay, we can see where this is going. But with
Right.
this
She's
one,
like,
they
chop,
didn't.
chop, 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 chop. You're like, is that sound is very specific, and they cut to her chopping.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
how's that gonna? Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So that some of that, it was kind of like, all right, yeah, I know exactly where this is going. But in this one, they didn't telegraph it at all. It was very very well done, I thought. And I didn't write the character's name down, but whatever her name was, it Joni? That was it, Joni. She was.
That's the friend's character. Yeah, I never.
Yes, Joni.
Yeah. Was her last name? Was she Mason? Was her last name Mason?
I don't think they ever said her last name.
Somebody's last name is Mason in this, which I just caught on this recent rewatch. Now, this isn't a like an overtly Masonic film or anything, but it is initiatory and there are rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And the character you're talking about, I didn't really start to worry about her. The first time I saw this, I spotted her in the meeting, like in the gym or whatever, when they're sitting in the chairs. I saw her like over here on the left. And then, she talks to her afterwards, and, she was very like genuine when she talked to her after the meeting. It wasn't until they were in the parking lot later that she came up and said, my son died. Right. And her tone changes that I went, whoa, what's up with this? And then, of course, by the time you get to her standing on the other side of the street, right, like at the school, right, doing the exorcism of the self, right? What's the kid's name? Is it Paul? Paul, get out! Right? She's like
Peter
yeah, that's it. She's doing an invocation and then doing conjuring Paimon to take possession of his body in that scene. That really, I didn't understand the first time exactly what she was doing, but then on a second rewatch, I was like, this is very clear. It's confusing and weird and chaotic, but it's that way purposefully in this film. So this is the first time you've seen it. Yeah.
Jason made a great comment in the chat. He said that nut chopping is similar to the possessed mother banging her head against the attic later.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I hadn't. Yep. There was a lot of, because I did a little bit of research after watching the movie, just kind of looking at some visuals and things of it. And there's a lot of shots that are mirrored. Like at one point in the film, then you see it again later on. And so things. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought that was a really good point, and just wanted to point out kind of how you'll see things repeating slightly differently.
Yeah, no, that is a great point. And that is, I think it's meant to be that. There is a head knocking scene. There is there are a few, there's the head on the desk scene. There are loud noises in this, not as quick as that, but it is certainly a foreshadowing element. The party scene had, it was heavy in the foreshadowing. Like the kids are sitting there watching a black and white movie of like somebody getting decapitated. Right. There are continuous images of like headless mannequins and dolls and the bird at the beginning. But I think that, there's a point to that in this that can be heavy handed in a film. And it could have gotten to the point where it didn't work in the sense that it wasn't supported by that. That can only work in a film or a work of literature if it matches the other, if it's multi-leveled and multi-layered. So if you introduce a new layer, it has to match the other elements of that same layer. It has to be consistent in the film in a way. And if there's inconsistency with that, then it has to be for a purpose, saying that the content is inconsistent. So the form and the content match, right?
Sure.
In this one, the movie, even the way that the movie begins, the very first shot of the film is complex. There is nuanced symbolism, right? The very first shot. So remember the very first shot, we're looking from inside the house through the window to the outside, and we see there's a tree house out there, right? There's woods behind it, but there's a treehouse, and the treehouse right away is unusual because it's got weird looking sort of beams on the side of it. It kind of
It's
looks like,
the Olgiz.
yeah, what the rune, right?
Yeah, the Olgiz rune. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Which is a rune of
it's,
protection, I think.
yes, and it's inverted, right? It's an inverted rune, protection or invitation. It's inverted. The treehouse itself is an inversion because it's a house that's floating in the air in a tree rather than grounded. When the
So did they?
characters, yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and this again, spoilers, but at the climax of the film, there's a part where one of the characters is literally levitating, right? Like levitates into the treehouse. And that itself is that's the definition of inversion in this. She is rising, she's transcending, but she's rising to hell, to a hellish place. So, she, instead of going down, she's going up into this thing. The treehouse consistently looks hellish at night. It's got these red, it's glowing red. There are continuous images of sun, solar images, which is weird and off-putting because if these are demons and these are bad people, why aren't they, moons or, what about darkness? What about wintertime? And I think that's clear in the film because when you look into it, this is the demon Paimon in this, right? Is the central servant of Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And he's adorned with what looks like solar rays, like hellish solar rays. So, and in the first scene, in that very first shot, did you notice the fly?
No, I didn't notice that.
There's a fly on the windowsill, and it's ooh, right. Rob Eggers I don't think they trained the fly. I don't know how they would you'd have to have 200 takes to train the fly. So, but the fly right from the beginning is indicative of what did you, if you went back and you saw the fly buzzing right there, right, and you hadn't seen the film, what would you assume, Matty? What would you take from that?
I would assume there's going to be something gross coming because flies are, associated with formerly, formerly living matter that's now decaying, filth, something gross kind of things. And yeah, so that's their sort of I always associate them with that because that's kind of where you see them most of the time is when something gross and unpleasant and filthy or decaying is taking place.
I thought you were going to say Jeff Goldblum in The Fly or Malkitras. The last thing you will see will be the flies buzzing around your rotting corpses. What movie is that from, chat? Who can answer that first? What is that? What is that from? What movie? What John Malkitras movie? Easy. This one's easy. Level 1. Yeah.
Well,
also,
a couple quick things on that. I realized the Olga's rune. They showed it later. I think the second time they showed the treehouse. So there may have been things on because that was on the front of it. I think there may have been other ones on the side, and I missed those initially. That was the only one I caught though. Was because they showed it when Charlie, the daughter, ran out to that field or whatever it was behind the house, and then she brings her back in. That's when they showed the front where it had the Olga's rune. But since you mentioned, we were talking about the chopping the walnuts and the banging the head on the attic. Is one of the things that I picked up on is there's a lot of ambient noise in the movie, and some of the notes in there was like breathing, clocks ticking, cars hitting bumps in the road, dogs barking, chairs scraping on floors, which usually in movies, if they're in a bar or something, yeah, you'll hear glasses clinking and people talking, maybe a jukebox in the background. But generally movies, you don't really get a lot of that ambient noise. And so yeah. I thought it made it more unnerving, more kind of eerie and more lifelike because it's not that sort of sanitized, at least from an an audio kind of sense, that I thought was very interesting, that you don't really see too often.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh wait, hold on. Fucking go away. Go away. No, no, I'm not disabling that. No, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Go back. Ah, fuck. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to share this. It's not even sharing. No, that's a good point. I mean, the sound design in this is fantastic. I went back and watched some videos of isolated sound design in this and The Witch today, and especially with the last scenes. But yes, you're right. The sense of dread that's conveyed through the both like cacophonous sounds and the lighter sounds. It's interesting because am I live? Am I still here? Am I frozen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was frozen over here. The worst parts of the film, in terms of symbolism and the meaning, are actually not loud and harsh and cacophonous. They're sweet and like euphonous. But the way that the little sounds in this like give you not jump scares, but and they're not obvious. They're not when you're watching a film, like for instance, if you're watching, this is the best example, The Dark Knight, and the score the entire time is going right. Remember when Batman, like, he has to paraglide or whatever, when they every scene is like and you're like, it just gives me sort of an anxiety watching it, and it doesn't really get earned. There's not really a payoff in it in a meaningful sense. This doesn't have that, and in fact the silence in the movie is really terrifying, because there are scenes in this where reality there we go. I'm redlining again. Apologize, people, if you're watching this. Hopefully you can still hear me through that. It'll be fixed on the replay, but the crossover between the real world and the dream world, right, and imagination is apparent throughout the film. There's a lot of scenes of bedrooms and beds and characters lying in bed or trying to sleep. And there's even one of the images that's the most striking towards the beginning of the film is where we see the grandmother, or the main character's mother, who's just passed away. We see her room and the door is open. We look in, it's just it's a hardwood floor. There's a bed and there's a clear, obvious black sigil painted on the bedroom floor, right? There's a triangle painted on the floor with one leg of the bed inside the triangle, and it's pointed diagonally, like out the window. And she's like, Toni Collette's like, what is this? She walks in, she's kind of, that's her mother's old room. Like, who went in this room? Who opened it? They shut the door and then they lock it. Now, as a viewer, you watch this and you go, what is this? I want to figure out like what this means. This is obvious. This is where the person watching a film who goes like, no, I don't, there's no symbolism. I'm just watching a horror film. This doesn't, it is what it is. It looks weird. Well, this movie is so packed with esoteric, occult, demonic symbolism and it's so multi-layered that you go investigating afterwards. This is what I did. Like, what is this? I knew that it was not a magic circle. It was some sort of magic thing on the floor, right, in her bedroom. I knew that, from reading about Al Crowley, that, you stay inside the magic circle, and then if you walk out, like he did with Victor Neuberg in that ritual they did in the desert, that if you cross the boundary, it's dangerous for the conjurer, right? So if there's one leg of the bed in this triangle, what it's saying to me is that whoever's being called from the open window into the triangle is supposed to then go to the bed, right? To, either in a dream world or whatever. If it's pointed towards the window, then obviously it's something from the window. So in Aleister Crowley's, in the Goetia, right? Crowley was in Loch Ness during the Goetia Abra Melon Mage if you've seen the Al Crowley documentaries, the wickedest man in the world. In the Goetia, he says that Paimon, who is the character we're going to get to, there's a character named Paimon, and Paimon is a of the air who resides in the Northwest. He's a demon of the Northwest wind, right? So it makes sense that like the triangle is pointed that way. So does that make any sense? Like, what do you think about all this? Is this just, is this just a bunch of like, LARPing, or is this what is all this in the film? What'd you take from it?
Yeah, I know. I think that one of the things, and I hadn't really considered this until you mentioned, the drawing on the floor of Ellen Lee's bedroom, and then them locking up and clearly being uncomfortable, because the whole thing, that Annie has about her mother is, she's this mysterious woman. We don't know anything about her. And I hadn't really considered this before, but I think their reaction to her room being open, I think that they probably had I don't think Annie and Steve had any idea of the depths of what she was into, but I think they probably knew more, or at least Annie did. And she was in denial because it's like, why would you have that kind of reaction to just the door being open? And so, yeah, I think that there was probably something to it. And the triangle also appears again when she goes back to Joni's apartment, and Joni's not there. And it zooms kind of like from the door into the interior of her apartment. And on her table, there's a triangle that she's drawn. And I think, was it the bird head that she had in the triangle? Because I think it was the same bird head, because Charlie, the daughter, Annie and Steve's daughter, because she's in class and there's a bird that hits the window and everybody's all like, oh, this is so gross. And then she goes out later with a pair of scissors and cuts the head off the bird and just like starts carrying it around with her. And she was that's one character we didn't touch on earlier, but she did very well in this role. She was very kind of unnerving, especially with the kind of clicking. But anyway, to answer your question, I think that this is all very real, because some of it's hard to tell, because it kind of messes with reality, because there's like dreams within dreams.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, is this actually a dream? Like, what's actually real here? And then, later, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but like later when we see these naked figures who are part of this cult, it's not even clear if they're apparitions or if they're actually real. But then, we figure out that no, they are indeed real. And so I do think that all of this is very real. I mean, obviously with, magic, we know, if you listen to, people like Jamie Hanshaw and Isaac Weishaupt, they'll talk about how, Crowley, he wasn't a total fraud. He was certainly a showman, and he, liked being infamous. He wanted to be this kind of, spooky character that freaked everybody out. But I mean, as we do know, because a lot of what these people, do is, it's like one of my close friends always says, like, the devil has a small bag of tricks, meaning that you'll see a lot of crossover. So whether it's, Freemasonry, whether it's, paganism, whether it's, Satanism, occult kind of stuff, there's a lot of overlap with these. And so, what these people are doing, like, it is satanic, it is pagan. But one of the things, and again, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I think they are very serious about this, and there is power in these things. I believe that it's not power you want to mess around with, but because in that prayer they give to Paimon at the end of the movie, they explicitly, it's not just like, they're denouncing God. Like, no, they specifically say, what I made a note of this. They say that we reject the Trinity. Yeah. And so there is a, that's, to me, it's like, okay, this is like on another level. This isn't people just putting on black robes and, dancing around a fire in the woods to be edgy or something. Like, this is a very serious, like black magic, like really dealing with serious, malevolent spiritual forces.
Yeah, those are great points, and I totally agree with you. I think in the original script, the cult was supposed to show up dressed like in red, like red cloaks, and they made the wise decision to go, no, we're not going to do that, because it is much, much worse how they appear in the film. In fact, part of the point of their appearance is that I still can't figure out for sure whether one of the guys in the cult that appears is one of Peter's teachers at the school, but it seems like everyone who appears in the cult, like in the circle around the treehouse and then inside the house in the corners, they all look like the people that were in the circle at the self-help group in the gym.
Oh, wow, that's a good catch. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that.
I mean, it mirrors it, exactly. And actually, probably for me, the worst, the most stark, horrifying single image in the film is actually when they're at the funeral, at the memorial service, at the funeral home at the beginning, and Charlie is standing there, and from her perspective, she looks up, and there's that guy standing there looking at. Do you remember that guy?
Mm-hmm.
The guy is standing there looking at her, like staring at her and smiling. That guy, that single character right there, who appears later, by the way, that one guy was, to me, was the worst. I mean, that face that he had was, I didn't know what I was in for, on the first watch, but I figured it was going to be, it was going to be a cult. It was going to be, have something to do with ritual and cults and some sort of, occult worship.
Wait, was that
because I went into it not knowing anything. Well, to me, that character, he reminded me of an interview that I watched one time with who was the one who went missing in Europe? Was that Madeleine McCann?
Yes, Madeleine McCann.
Yeah. So I watched an interview one time with, I don't think it was her parents, but it was parents of someone else that they claimed that happened to, and the dad had that like indescribable thing where you were watching him and you just like, I got the creepy crawlies, man. I got the heebie-jeebies watching him. He was doing the alligator tears. There were no tears. He was doing, and he had that severe face. He had the eyes. And that guy in the film, he's got this like kind of weird like hair color. Everybody at the memorial service is, it's odd. It's odd from the start. And you mentioned dream within a dream. That happens in the film. Remember that Toni Collette has a nightmare within a nightmare.
Yeah, because she has like the ants are everywhere, and then she's back with the paint thinner and the match.
That's right. Yeah.
Because now that guy, the guy you're talking about, he was the same one later. I think he's the first one of the cult members that appears, right? He's over like in the corner when Peter, like everything's kind of coming to a climax, and Peter's in the house, and he looks over and there's that person just like creepily staring with a smile over. Is that the same? Okay, I thought it was the same guy.
Well, there are a few of those. Yeah, there are a few of those. But yeah, they're standing in corners, like smiling and with no clothes on.
Yeah, and I did think it hinted. I did get a bit of an idea that maybe there was going to be a cult element to it when they were at the funeral. And the first thing is like, okay, this woman looks like Mae Musk, and then it's like, oh well. Also, she's like, oh, there's basically she didn't recognize Annie didn't recognize anybody at the funeral, and so I think that I was like, okay, so she's leading some kind of double life. There's something else going on here that she's involved in that's probably nefarious.
Well, she says, when she's giving the eulogy, or what's is supposed to be a eulogy, she the way she describes her mother. Right. She says that her mother, her mother's, what does she say? Not religious beliefs. Maybe she does say that her beliefs or something like that were very close to her. She didn't reveal much, and she was very secretive. Right. And then later, of course, she mentions that her mother, like she clearly mentions, right, that her mother had D.I.D. That her brother is gone because he smoked himself, right, and suffered schizo.
And he said that
Um,
their mother, Ellen Lee, had put people into him.
mm,
And then her
yes,
father,
yes.
she says, he starved himself to death because he had depressive or psychotic depression. Which this is totally like unrelated. This is just a fun. It's not really funny, but you remember Stefan Molyneux?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember because I have this screenshot I've had on my phone for years because I thought it was funny of where somebody had put two of his tweets side by side. One of them where he was like every aspect of personality is like determined by genetics. And then there was one next to it of another one of his tweets where he said, both my parents are institutionalized. It just made me think of that when she was talking about her. Anyway, that was just like a dumb thing I thought was kind of funny. But yeah,
Well,
it was interesting that her whole, because you got to wonder, like, how did she come out of this unscathed? Like, if her brother's schizophrenic, her mother's D.I.D, and her father, but so then it raises the question, okay, were these people, and I'm not saying mental illness doesn't exist, but it's like, were these people genuinely mentally ill, or was there some kind of, like, were they into something that maybe she wasn't aware of, or at least wasn't aware of the extent of?
well, so that touches on the like some of the overriding themes in this, which are that when we find out that Annie, right, Tony Collette's character, sleepwalks, which a lot of the film, like we actually do get a lot of the storyline and the meat of the storyline through confession, right? But the confession is weird because it's to a stranger that you met like in a self-help circle. And even at one point, right? Remember when we see the mail in the mail slot, like we see a hand like, insert a thing for another self-help group, like in the top of the mail. So it's the hidden hand. It's obviously someone in the cult. And even the way that leaflet, that flyer looks is like, what does it say? It's like, Randy Ball's Sigrun Club. And it's like a guy in gold, like, going like this, like mimicking a rune with like solar rays coming off of it, and don't go to this group, first of all. Right. Um, I like the little things in the, the details. Like she tells her husband every time that she's going to a movie. Right. Which we don't really question and we know is a lie. And he probably knows it's a lie, but that's okay because she's, living her life or whatever. And she's got obviously got a lot to deal with. He's a psychiatrist, by the way, which means that they probably met that way. Immediately after the memorial service, we see the miniature of the house and we see the now deceased grandmother or mother in a nightgown, like in the like lit up doorway of the kid's room. Like, right. We see a motherhood scene where Toni Collette is like in bed, like about to nurse her daughter, but then her mother is standing there in a nightgown, like also exposing, she's about to nurse.
Yeah, that was
So,
one of the grossest thing. I'm
yes.
not saying like nursing is gross, obviously, but that the way it was presented, I was like, this is one of the grossest things out of any movie I've seen. And yeah, I was like, this is truly revolting.
Well, at least they didn't do the trope of like the mother has like super long, unkempt gray hair that she's unleashed and she's like,
Yeah,
it's time for me to milky. Like instead it was we don't even hear her speak.
yeah, she has
Right.
no dialogue.
And right
All.
after she's, after the funeral service, like when Toni Collette goes back and she's got the, the thing and she's making the miniatures and she looks into the corners of the room and the camera quickly looks over and we see a shadow in the corner. And by the way, I mentioned on a recent stream that this happened to me. And I think this is, Ager points this out, like when you're, not to give to, psychological, observation, but it probably is true that when in this sort of vacuum effect of the silences from the noise of life and when you're alone, like think about when you're a kid. When I was at home alone and I was like 11 and we lived in the city, like I was dialed into any noise, right? I'm still like that at home. Like if I hear something, right, it alerts me. It puts me on alert. And then it always occurs that the one time when you relax that, there's like a knock at the door at a weird time or like a doorbell or that you can hear somebody outside or like opening your car door, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was at home alone. I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden, it got in my mind that to check the door, that the door was locked. So I got up, checked the door, it was fine. Of course I locked it. Then I got back in bed, and then I looked, and in the corner of the room, the corner was dark, and it looked like a hooded person was standing there, like in the corner behind the door. But then it was clearly a fucking hoodie that I put on a hook on the back of the door. And I was like, my dumb ass, why would I put that right there this one time? Right. So your mind like fills in the things that you normally have, but in the silence and the sort of vacuum effect, like we fill that in, and we can fill it in with like scary things, sounds, people that we see that aren't there or whatever. That's of course just one interpretation. Obviously, this movie is blatantly demonic, so it's kind of both in the movie.
And
but then she sees her. She really does look, and she is standing there, right in that nightgown. She's like smiling, and she's like, "What the fuck?" Right, and then kind of turns away, looks, and then she's not there. Well, that wasn't her mind playing tricks. Like that was her mother, right? That was her demon ghost or whatever. And I'll do it, Biden. By the way, a couple of later, Pops gets a phone call. Son's like, "Oh, it's the cemetery. They're calling you." What the fuck? Why's the cemetery calling? What does that mean? What does that mean? Desecrated. That's not good. You don't want to hear that on the phone from the cemetery.
The idea that anybody would desecrate a grave. So I had to get that in there. But one thing I will say about the dad, Steve, Annie's husband, is he was maybe the only. I mean, Peter is as well. Like Peter, like when it comes to sympathetic characters, like Peter's kind of he's sort of a loser. He just wants to like get high with his friends and talk to girls. He does like, but he's just like a normal high schooler, right? He doesn't. He's not like he's not malicious, right? Like he's not intentionally trying to harm anybody. But like Steve, I thought he was a very interesting character because he's a very orderly kind of guy. He's very involved with his family, but he's not overbearing with it. He's not this like domineering, iron-fisted type of character. Like they get back, I think it was from the funeral, and he's like, the kids are like what 13 and 16, and he's like, take your shoes off, in the house. And, he checks in on them and he expresses concern, like he finds because like the opening scene where they're getting ready to go to the funeral, he goes into Peter's room.
Time to get up. Right. Time to
he's
get
like
up.
Waking him up. He's got his suit for him. He goes out and finds Charlie in the tree house where she had slept out there, and he was like, "Oh, it was freezing last night. Like you're gonna get pneumonia like this." So he's a very caring, involved kind of guy, and he even, without sort of becoming hostile towards Annie, he sort of turns against her to an extent, in order to try to protect his children, because he realizes she's she's lost touch with reality, and because he's a psychiatrist. Because most psychiatrists, they that's kind of where they go to. They think, oh, this is like a mental type of thing, and a lot of them, are materialists, so they don't believe that there's anything bigger out there, like beyond whatever they can kind of deal with. So anyway, I thought he was a very sympathetic character, and
you're right. For. I mean, one thing he doesn't do is he doesn't try to psychoanalyze his wife like at home. He treats her pretty well. He's firm with the kids and stuff. It is weird that, he lets his daughter like go out and, be sleeping in that tree house. I mean, that would be wholesome and great. Like if it were any other family or situation than this one, because, Charlie in this film is clearly, it's like, why do I keep finding bird heads everywhere and stuff? Like you got a demon inside you, we need to send you to Pastor Randy, but actually that might make it worse. They are materialistic. They are the type who, they don't get up and go to church. They don't have a church memorial service. This is a straight up funeral home with sigils and weird pictures. They you kind of ask yourself, like, what's the point of the rituals of funeral, like, and how they do it, if they, I don't know how I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I mean, the funeral that they have, for instance, later in the film, where the mother is like she's completely lost it, right? And everybody's just standing there. Well, I mean, that's a religious funeral. I don't remember seeing like a priest or a preacher in that scene, but it is. They're standing in front of a casket. They are burying the dead. So I don't.
What was interesting, there was something I noticed is, like it was totally absent of any kind of anything spiritual at all. But because the first thing we see on screen is the obituary, is Ellen Lee's obituary. And they use the word, when they say that she died, they say she reposed, which stood out to me because I mean, it's not like exclusive to but like in Orthodoxy, we'll say like, somebody reposed in whatever year. And so it's a word that's often used in a religious context, in a Christian context, but it wasn't. That was something because I did pick up on that contrast between Charlie's funeral and Ellen Lee's funeral. And it almost seems pointless. It's kind of like the argument people make that, okay, well, if you're going to get married, but you're not going to do it, in a church, then what's the point? And it's kind of like with a funeral, it's the same thing. It's like, if you don't believe that this person is, going on to something else, if you don't believe in like an afterlife, and obviously you're not just going to like throw the body in the trash or something, but I think you get my point.
Yeah. You would think they would take it to Terrence McKenna's biofarm and like cover it in mushrooms, right? You'll be one with the satyrs, man.
Right, we're gonna get blasted on the Ellen Lee spores.
Yeah, we'll put you in a giant red fist full of peyote and blast you up into the sky. Remember they did that with Hunter Thompson?
Yeah, and then Johnny Depp paid like, was it $2 million for it or something crazy? Like, there's a really good documentary on that called When I Die. It's kind of hard to find, but it was pretty interesting on them trying to get that constructed.
It's like boomers standing around like fucking taking bong hits out of typewriters or something, throwing like a peyote fist into the sky. Man, he's transcended. Right. I mean,
it was all just establishment people. It was like Ed Bradley and John Kerry and Bill Murray drinking whiskey, watching his ashes get blown into the sky.
So tired of Bill Murray, like so tired of we don't really hear it that much anymore, but I'm so tired of like the lore. Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, he came and crashed my wedding, dude. It was awesome. It's like, it was awesome.
I don't care who. If you crash my wedding, I'm going to be pissed. I don't care who it is.
This dude even like, did y'all even know who this guy was? Who even knows who that? Yeah, but anyway, I'm sure he's lovely. No, but the wedding crash. In the movies they always do this thing where like speak now, forever hold your peace, and then like somebody busts into the back and they're like, wait, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the resolution. It's leading towards the great climax of the movie where the guy's going to get his girl. Well, the only way that's good. Like the only way that can work out in a good way is that Shane Gillis skit. Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
He's blind. He shows up and he's blind, right? And he's got a cane, and he's like, "Wait, are you? I forget her name. Are you Elizabeth? Like Eliza?" And he's like touching her face. And she's like, "No, it's S.A." And he's like, "No." And he's blind, and then he like hits the wedding cake. A guy chases him. He like does like a fullback tackle, jumps into the pool. The priest is like, this guy can see.
Oh gosh, no, I have to look that one up. There's one thing, and this is unrelated, but I wanted to mention this because this is just a note I took. So after, when it ties in with what we were talking about a moment ago, but when Annie starts seeing things right after Ellen Lee's funeral, shortly after. She goes to that website. It was called Norms on Discerning Presumed Apparitions, and I noticed the web page. It looks like one of those, and I'm sure you've been on these websites. It looks like they were made sometime like the mid 2000s. A lot of like conspiracy theory websites. A lot of them are inexplicably still online, so you can go to these websites, you can still read what's on there, but it's like this nothing's been done to this since like 2006.
It's like
And I was like, that's a
Helvetica
nice
font.
touch.
Yeah. Windows 95. It's also funny that Norm Macdonald owned that domain name in there. That was crazy. You know, that's back when people would tell you where to go online, and they would go www.aol. People did that until like 2019.
Yeah.
They finally got rid of saying the W's. Until
I
finally
remember
they figured out,
watching,
like, yeah.
like watching kid shows back in the day, and then like, you know, go to http://www. Zoom on PBS or whatever.org.
Dude, I went on
URL.
MTV. I went on www.mtv.com when it first came out. I didn't care about the internet till like the way into it.
Yeah.
But one of my buddies had a computer, and he had like the internet. And I was like, what the hell is this? You know? And then he was like, we can go to this thing. And so we were watching MTV, and we went to the website, and like we finally walked away because it was loading. And then we came back like an hour and a half later, and it loaded like half the screen, like the home screen. It's like half an M. Like, this fucking sucks, dude. World at your fingertips. What are you talking about? This shit sucks. Now there's not even guys in the chat. People in the chat. Do you know what MTV is? Do y'all know what that is? MTV has been reality TV longer than it ever showed videos, which is crazy. But also, why would you even show videos anymore when you have Vimeo?
Yeah, you had Vimeo.
Is there still a Vimeo?
Yeah, Vimeo's still around. I was watching. I was watching something on there the other day. I was doing research before that Sicario stream. I was watching something about cartels. It wasn't like a live leak video. It was just something I found.
You heard the chainsaw first. Oh no, this isn't good. So
yeah, it was like,
watching rotten.com in 2000. No, thanks. No, I only
this week on Gangland, and then it's like, psych, this is actually a chainsaw.
I spend all my time on Hereditary musical score stand.tumblr.
Okay.
No. The music in this is striking though. So all right, so look,
you should actually make that blog.
I bet, yeah. The music. Okay, so let me say this. I'm gonna try to get centered here for a second.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna mention something that happens at the end of the film, and then if you would take the folks at home through a brief, concise, as best as you can, like what happens in the movie for the folks at home.
Sure.
Not the 90-minute one that I watched today. And then we got to get to a discussion of Paimon and what that is.
Yes.
This fucking, yeah. All right. So here's my part. At the end of the film, the title of this is The Dark Apotheosis, right? It's this movie and The Witch have one of the clearest, these are very clear examples of like truly what a climax is in terms of a narrative structure. So if you look at, for instance, the narrative structure of the arc in a novel, right? You get introduction, exposition, rising action, right? Climax, falling action, resolution. And it kind of goes up like at a peak at about 3/4, and then it kind of goes down about 1/4 of the way, and then it flatlines. The peak doesn't go all the way back down because it's, in a good work, you don't return to the baseline where you were. You're on a different plane. And the climax in this film is slightly different because it does lead to an actual climax at the very end of that, that bent line. And we end on the climax. We don't get a resolution. We don't get anything after the climax, because this is like it's a ritualistic, dark, religious, possession, apotheosis. And it is like very striking and disturbing in this film. Okay. And all of the elements really do converge in the movie because it takes place in the treehouse that we've seen throughout. And the treehouse has gone through day and night. There's a scene where it snaps and it turns from day to night. It's glowing red kind of continuously. Various characters will inhabit this place. It has the rune on the side of it to mark it. There is a clear, we could read into this, a clear kind of pseudo Jacob's ladder going into the treehouse. But at the end, we learn truly that instead of rising up, we're actually, in a sense, going downwards, right down into hell. And the reason I say that is because just prior to this, there's a scene where Toni Collette is walking through the hallway of her friend, who ends up being the kind of the Paimon character herself to the Paimon that they make, right, that they conjure. She's the assistant, I guess, more of like kind of a Mephistopheles. And we see it from above, and it inverts, it flips. So down is up is down, right? Like in Macbeth, the start of Macbeth, they invert the natural order of things. What do they say? They say, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. So the bad is good, the good is bad. Their bad, their evil is good to them. Same occurs in Paradise Lost. In fact, the word pandemonium occurs in the film. It's scratched on a wall as a kind of talisman. Pandemonium. John Milton, Paradise Lost. All the devils are here. This is where all the devils live. The city in hell. And it's also kind of a nod. They do the same thing in what else? In The Shining, the start of The Shining. Remember, you see the yellow Volkswagen like going through the mountains. You see the view from above. Wendy Carlos's dark organ synths are playing, and we hear in the background the sounds of, it sounds like people in a cave kind of screaming, like a hellish kind of moan. And then we descend upon the car, and there's a lake, a clear lake where we get a reflection. So down is up is down. We're going into some other plane of existence here where, things are going to happen. And Paimon, the more we get into this, and we'll get into this at the end, Paimon himself, one of his attributes is that he's a demon of the air. He's a spirit of the air, just like Ariel was in The Tempest, just like, Lucifer falls from above. Sometimes Lucifer is depicted with wings, like think of the Led Zeppelin imagery. Right? The morning star, the evening star, this occurs a lot. And he's above looking down. We see images throughout of lights and electricity. There's one that's very subtle in this, which I didn't notice till this time, and it's Toni Collette is in her studio making her miniatures. And you see just for a second, there's a flash of light outside in the window, which kind of looks just like a natural flare. But right after that, the paint falls over right onto the table. That leads her to try to clean it up. That leads to her picking up the note with the phone number of the woman on it. And then that whole thing gets started. Right. So at the end of the film, big spoiler, at the end of the film, Toni Collette's character, after she's undergone the worst series of traumas you can, levitates up into the thing. Peter goes up into the treehouse, and we immediately see, should I describe this for the folks at home? You've seen it,
yes.
you'll know what I'm talking about. Our view now is we hear kind of weirdly uplifting, soft organ music. Mm-hmm. We see people bowing in obeisance with headless people bowing. Right, they're on their knees bowing. We see I think Charlie's head is like on a pike as an idol, and then we see a statue, a obviously demonic statue of a representation of Paimon, who is a demon with like a kind of a shepherd's crook with a crown of solar rays. And then the initiation begins, and Peter the son is invested with possession by Paimon. They worship him, and he's now been conjured, and he's in full possession. They've raised this demon, and he's there, and they are his demonic servants, and that's it. That's the movie.
Yes, yeah, that was.
Give me the creepy crawlies.
it was pretty dark, to say the least. And I mean that statue of Paimon at the end, I actually initially, I thought it was like a, just when they first showed it, I was thinking it was going in a different kind of direction, because I thought it was like some kind of blasphemous mockery of Christ, and
Yeah.
because it sort of had the, some of the, it wasn't, some of the representation, you could be like, okay, I could see where like they could get this kind of like crude, um, mockery. But
I mean,
yeah,
wasn't it?
I
Don't
mean,
you think it was that also?
I think it probably was. I mean, I think there's probably something to that. That yeah, there was probably an element of that in there as well, because yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's a very weird. Um, but I mean, this is. I was just thinking, like, now that I'm actually saying this out loud, because I watched it and made notes, but I mean, this is one of the, maybe, like, I texted BLA earlier for the audience while I was watching. I was like, I'm not even a half hour into this, and this is the gnarliest movie I've ever seen. Like, this is even more gnarly than Crash.
Yeah.
It's super. I mean, extremely. It's not like outright blasphemous, but it is the undertones there, are. Oh yeah, there it is.
There it is again.
Yeah. Um, So yeah, okay, good. That's interesting because it says, yeah, the images of Paimon online don't depict him that way. So I don't really know exactly what's going on there. I do notice that one of his hands it's the same position that one of the Baphomet's hands is in.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, did you want me to run through the plot now real quick?
Yeah. Just briefly. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
just right before that. Yeah, it looks like his. I mean, this hand right here is his right hand is clearly in the Baphomet pose pointing down. This is clearly a idolized blasphemous picture that's supposed to resemble. It's supposed to resemble Christ, but this is a demon, right? He
Hmm.
has a crown instead of a crown of thorns. He's got a crown of sun rays. This is not this is not the good shepherd. This is some sort of gnarled crook right here.
Hmm.
And then notice even in the background, right, with the slash, the slashed light rays crossing through him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're in a treehouse, right? And it kind of makes you sort of think of a manger a little bit, maybe.
Hmm.
This is a former, this was a child's treehouse. It's also above, right? It's
Yeah.
risen up. He's a demon of the air. Yeah, so there's much more to this. There's much more symbolism, which we'll get into after you give the narrative. What happens in this film? I'm gonna try to pull up some other pictures. I'm gonna take myself off of here because I'm gonna pull up some other pictures
Okay.
while you're talking to me here. Let me try and isolate you if I can.
Yeah, and I mentioned, because in the book, I'll get to that in a moment. But I mean, there's even, I pulled this up because I was trying to remember exactly where it is. But even in Ephesians 2, it mentions if I can read this real quick. I mean, it says, "And he made you alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of the world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lusts of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others." Now, fulfilling the desires of the flesh, this is, I think, relevant to um, this to at the end, because there's this whole, before they make, what's his name, Peter, before they like fully possess him with the spirit of Paimon, there's this whole prayer that they offer up to this demon. And one of the things that they make, because like I mentioned there, they explicitly, whoever, I think it was Joni who was giving the prayer, they didn't actually show who it was, but she, whoever it was giving it, does, like I said, explicitly say, like, yes, we reject the Trinity. But in that, there's at the end of the prayer, she asks for, I can't remember, it's something like basically for like worldly pleasure, like money, and she doesn't say money, but it's like riches or something like that, and power, and good relations and these kinds of things. So that yeah, I mean that is a very much sort of a satanic kind of thing, as in line with what we see in Ephesians 2. As so anyway, to get to a quick synopsis of the plot, yeah, like because we've touched on a lot of these things, but so yes, Ellen Lee, who is Annie's mother, who's been living with Annie and Steve, she dies, and they have her funeral, and then so Annie makes these like miniatures, and she does art exhibits. So she'll make these scenes from her life into these miniature exhibits. And like we said, Steve is a he's a shrink, and so Peter wants to go to this party with some friends, and so because we haven't touched on this yet, but because we did mention Charlie. Charlie is their daughter, whose name is Charles, which I thought was kind of, I guess we can get into that. There's probably some symbolism there, but so he's going to this party, and Annie's like, well, you're going to be drinking. He was like, well, no, we can't even get alcohol. Like, he doesn't actually answer the question directly. And so she's like, okay, well, take Charlie with you. And he doesn't push back against it. He's kind of like, and she doesn't want to go. That's the thing. Charlie's like, no, I don't want to go. And he's like, oh, she's like, well, you have to go with your brother. It'll be fun. You can hang out with other kids, because this girl is very much kind of detached and cold, and she's very odd in her being, to say the least. She's a very strange girl, not in a good way. And so they go to this party. Like I said, she was, obviously has this nut allergy, and so Peter goes and is hitting on this girl, and he wants to. He's trying to find an in with her, and so he's like, oh well, I got. He pulls out this huge bag of weed, and he's like, oh, I got really good weed. And she's like, okay. So they go and they smoke, and Charlie's like, well, I'm gonna go with you, and he's like, well, no, just stay here and have some cake. Like they're almost out. Just go ask them for some. So she goes and eats the cake. They're in there, taking bong rips, and she comes in and she's wheezing, and she's like, I can't breathe. And so he gets her into the car. They take off, and she sticks her head out because he's trying to get to the hospital. They're getting close. She sticks her head out the window. And one thing I actually forgot to mention, if you'll scroll back up just for a second, there was something I wanted to, this symbol we see, and I didn't know what the symbol was initially, and I figured it out, or I guess it was on the other page. There it is. That symbol up there, that sigil up there at the top, when they're actually driving to the party, that's carved on a power pole that they pass by, because the car goes by, it zooms in, and I was like, there's some kind of sigil or something on there. I just couldn't figure out what it was. So anyway, which again, you could say is a bit of foreshadowing, because she is, leaning way out the window, and then they hit a power pole and her head is removed by, by this. And so he stops. Peter's just, he's in shock. Like, he doesn't know what to do. And so he just goes back home, and he asks, he's like, are you all right? Like, clearly she's not, because she's deceased. And so he goes back home, and he just goes to bed because he doesn't know what else to do. And then his parents obviously find the rest of her body in the back seat the next morning, and they have the funeral. And so weird things, kind of like I mentioned, things happen right after Ellen Lee's funeral, but increasingly strange things start happening. Annie goes to these, grief anonymous meetings. She initially goes to one after Ellen Lee dies, and then she goes again after Charlie dies. And that's when Joni, this woman, seemingly, unassuming, disarming kind of woman, comes up and stops her at the park. Like, she pulls up, and then she's just going to leave. And she stops her car and says, well, here's my number. Call me in case you need anything. So she goes over. Later, she goes over to Joni's house, and they kind of hang out and talk, and she tries to relate to her, and then she goes, or no, then she goes. Annie goes to an art store to get some art supplies, and she sees Joni in the parking lot. And so Joni's like, "Oh, you have to come to my house because I have this this thing that somebody showed me." And so they go to her house, and she does a seance, right? Because she's like, "Oh, I found this spirit medium," and she is, you know, supposed to be contacting, because Joni's story is her son and her grandson passed away; they drowned, and so she teaches her how to do the seance. And so, because what we see, that one of the two of the big themes in this film are grief and desperation, because
Joni Arias.
Joni
Wasn't she the one? Wasn't she the one with the drown? Was that Jodi Arias?
that did what?
Who was the one that was it alleged, or were they acquitted? There was a series of women, right, in the 2010s that, you know, remember the hot killers or whatever? There was Jodi
Yeah,
Arias. Wasn't she the one that, you know, was doing the same thing that Joni says happened to her kids?
I
Or
think
was she
Jodi
the
Arias.
one that like did that with her boyfriend?
I think it was her boyfriend. There was a woman, I do remember this because I remember reading about it in Reader's Digest years ago. There was a woman who, and you can't, I don't remember her name. It was a famous case, but she did that
Yeah.
to her children, and she ended up going to prison for it. And this was in the Reader's Digest article. I don't have the issue anymore, obviously, and you can't find this anymore. But this was just a side note, that this woman, whatever her name is, who did that to her children in the bathtub, they said that during the court proceedings she kept like scratching her head because what she claimed was that 3 6s had been like branded or something into her skull. And so, you know, make of that what you
Interesting.
will. Yeah, and
That
I
was
can't.
Andrea Yates. I think that was
Andrea
Andrea
Yates,
Yates.
that
Yeah.
was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Jodi Arias was the one. I think that was her boyfriend, if I remember correctly. I can't keep all these
Yeah.
cases straight.
And then John Wayne Bobbitt, that was a whole other thing. If you're old enough to know what that was about.
I remember
You
the
know,
name. I don't remember the case though.
anybody here, any 80s baby, 90s people, John Wayne Bobbitt, if you hear that name, you'll immediately know. Somehow it brings up right away to mind what happened to him. This fella's asleep in bed, you know, just minding his business asleep. All of a sudden, bam! No more Mr. Wang, no offense, right? John Wayne Bobbitt, right? She said, "I'm pissed and I'm gonna take it out on you, right? I'm gonna turn you into who was recently, it was reported they just, one of those creeps that opened their bathrobe and had a gash. Was that Warvey Heinstein? Who was sorry, folks. I'm getting a little blue here. I'm trying to use code
Probably.
as best I can. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes, Andrea Yates was the one.
Andrea Yates, yeah. I wish I could find that Reader's Digest article because
Nancy Kerrigan. Why? Remember her?
Dude, that was a weird time. I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, so she teaches her so we see like grief and desperation is because obviously there's something spiritual going on here. But I think it's exacerbated by the fact that Annie's basically going insane from grief. Like these things, her mother, who she was not close with at all, passes away, and then her daughter passes away very violently and unexpectedly, and she sort of, in a way, blames her son for it because her son was driving. But anyway, so to get back to the just to wrap up the plot here. So she then I'm trying to keep the name straight. Joni tells Annie that she has to do this seance, and she's like, "Well, what do these words mean? What language is this? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just say them. The medium taught me how to say it, right?" And so she says, "You have to do it when your whole family's home, though." And so they go downstairs. It's, you know, like 1:45 in the morning. She can see it on the digital alarm clock, and she wakes everybody up. She's like, "Oh, we have to do this. We have to do this." And she basically does this thing and conjures up what is supposed to be Charlie. And so what they bring, because you have to have an item that belonged to the deceased, and so she has her sketchbook because she had, I think it was Jason, somebody, it might have been Jason, made a comment in the chat earlier that she that, Annie makes these really detailed, intricate models, and Charlie just makes these really like crude, bizarre drawings. Like the girl that Peter was hitting on at the party was like, "Oh yeah, your sister drew me last week and she made me look R slurred," which I thought was kind of funny.
Turns out, Charlie's drawings are more accurate in the spirit of things than her mother's
Yeah,
orderly dollhouse, right?
that is true. Yes, 100%. And so we start to see Annie kind of losing it because she does a model of the crash where her daughter loses her head, and her husband is like, "This is like just like awful. Like, why? What are you
What's
doing?"
the crack? What the fuck is this?
And she's like, "Oh, this is just an objective artistic rendering of what happened." And he's clearly disgusted by this because
Yeah.
there's this tension she has with her son where they clearly don't they clearly don't like each other, or she doesn't like him, I should say.
Yeah.
And so anyway, things keep getting more and more bizarre. Peter starts having these incidents at school where he kind of starts freaking out. And he's seeing this like energy field kind of thing moving in front of him. And then we find out, yeah, like the that Ellen Lee's grave had been desecrated, and then Annie's going through some boxes of things that belong to her mother, and we find this book. We find these books, these occult books about payment, and it mentions payment because there's a highlighted
All of
section.
all time. This is
Yeah,
terrible.
this is
Yeah.
this is horrific. Where it mentions, I took notes about this, where she mentions payment. Oh, and one thing is, so Annie had said that earlier. I just want to mention this. She had said that she uh, when she was talking to Joni, and we noticed Joni has a doormat in front of her in front of her house, and she's like, "Oh, my mother used to," and Annie says, "My mother used to embroider those." And so I didn't pick up on like, oh, because we don't know yet that her mother made that one. And
It's
so
just
she's
cute
going through.
Americana. It's just a
Yeah,
doormat. Yeah.
it's just normal because you don't really think that much into it. But then, so Annie tells her that she almost set herself and her children on fire. She said, "Well, I used to sleepwalk, and then when the kids used to share a room, she had gone in there and she woke up because she was covered in paint thinner, completely soaked in it. So were her children. And what woke Annie up was when she struck a match. Clearly, was going to burn everybody up. And her son woke up and was like, 'What are you doing?' And she said he never forgave her for that. So she has an outburst at dinner and freaks out on him. He actually responds fairly maturely. But anyway, so uh, then we see Annie. She throws Charlie's sketchbook in the fire because she's starting to realize there's something wrong with this. But then when she does that, Annie's sleeve catches on fire. And so
Yeah.
it's burning her. So then she, gets a rake or something, like a fireplace rake, and pulls out the fire, stamps it out. And then the flame on her sleeve goes out. But we see that the sketchbook is unscathed, that like it's still in perfect condition. And so then she starts going through these boxes. This is where she finds these occult books. And we see where Ellen Lee had made these doormats for Charlie and for Peter with their names on them. And there's these two symbols at the top and the bottom of the one for Charlie, and they kind of resemble pentagrams, kind of resemble what there's a unicursal hexagram, right? The
Uh-huh.
kind of weird star-shaped thing in Thelema. And so then we see that, yeah, again, she's going through these books. There's a highlighted section, and it talks about, yes, there it is. Yeah, the hexagram. And it mentions payment. It says that payment is this god of mischief. And so we can kind of see where that's manifesting with, some of the things happening um, around Peter, and some of the things are happening because it is malicious and it is malevolent, but initially it's not exactly harmful. It's just kind of messing with them a little bit. And so then it details in this highlighted passage that Payman, which is the god of mischief, says it possesses the most vulnerable host. A ritual locks in the possession, and a new ritual is required to unlock the possession. And so what we see is that Payman basically inhabited Charlie by mistake, and so it was actually supposed to inhabit Peter. And then, like you said, we get to the part where there's a scene where Annie is because so then she tells Steve that, okay, she's pleading with him, like, you have to burn this sketchbook, because the sketchbook starts drawing on its own these um, like drawings of Peter start appearing, where it's like his face is crossed out, his eyes are crossed out. And so then he's in school and he starts slamming his head on the desk, breaks his nose. One of his eyes is all like messed up and bloodshot, or that might happen later.
Yeah. Automatic
And
writing, self-scrying, the hidden hand.
yes,
Right.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so then Peter, he rushes sorry, I'm jumping around here. I'm trying to keep this straight. Annie's pleading with Steve, like, we have to destroy this sketchbook. We have to get rid of it. And so she says, you have to throw it in the fire. And he's like, no, I'm not doing this. You're sick. You need help. And so then she throws it in the fire, and then Steve goes up in a ball of flames, basically. And there was one scene. Okay, I didn't actually watch. You might could fill us in on this. I didn't actually watch the scene because she goes up into the attic. Annie goes up in the attic at one point, and there's flies everywhere. It's like swarming in the attic.
Yeah.
And she says, I will admit, I looked away at this part because I knew, in the words of Papa Ewok, it was going to be disgusting. And so I was like, whatever's happened. And it was clearly her mother's, I guess it was Ellen Lee's body. And someone had dug it up. And Steve accuses Annie of digging up Ellen Lee's Ellen Lee's body. And so then we...
Hold on, let me start it real quick.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, you guys, if you with the sigils and stuff on the screen. We're looking at this, as we're analyzing a movie, and the stuff is, those are real sigils, but fuck these things, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We're not somebody's, Elon's grandmother sigil wearing, people doing D.I.D ritual shit, Christ returns with a flaming sword and puts a boot up these people's ass. I mean, I don't mean to cuss, like, but you know the spirit of what I'm saying here. Out with all this stuff. And that the movie it's actually a solid movie in the sense that it truthfully depicts all of the pain and anguish and suffering and darkness that goes along with all this stuff, offering up the buying into it, and the sacrifices that they offer are the worst. Like, it's just total destruction. And I think the movie does this pretty well, in the sense that anybody watching this would, you would watch this and you would go, this is evil shit, and it's important. You can do what you choose and what you want, especially with reading and watching films and stuff. And there are certainly limits, even for people who watch this all the time. The first time that I watched this, and when I watched it over and over, which was like 2018, 2019, I was really like in the rabbit hole of looking into this from the movie and trying to figure out what this shit was, the sigils, the meaning, the Zoso, Jimmy Page's Zoso, which comes from this thing. And I think is related. By the way, Jimmy Page's name, Led Zeppelin, his name, Zoso, the name of the fourth album, I think most likely is a magical invocation name that comes from his initial activities with a Ouija board and the contact with, something on the other side, which I think is real. I think that's not like, there is LARPing and, shit with that stuff, but I think that's real. I've talked about that before with Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath and their Ouija activities and contacting that demon named Pan, which Sylvia Plath said possessed Ted Hughes, literally later on. And the reason I brought this up is because, look, This right here, which the name of it is actually above that, is Paimon. This right here, this in the top right, second from the right, is Paimon's sigil. And you notice that one thing the movie does, which I think is interesting and important to point out before Matty finishes, this sigil occurs throughout the film. The grandmother is wearing it on a necklace when she's buried. She's buried with it. The Toni Collette is wearing it in her eulogy. It's on the telephone pole where the head sacrifice occurs. And that's the symbol, that's the sigil of Paimon. But in the film, you notice that there are 3 characters right there in what looks like a, either an offering, some sort of weird offering plate, or a ship. There are 3, and here there are 4. And I guess the reason that the filmmakers decided to do it that way was, for one, because if you're making a movie about this, it's obviously dangerous to, the movie itself kind of functions as a long initiatory ritual in a way, if that's the way you went into it. They're making this thing. So I suppose probably on the one thought was, on the safe side, don't actually put the real thing. Another thought was probably like, look, the creeps that actually do this stuff, they're watching it, and the creeps who made the movie are probably like, well, we don't want to offend those creeps, by putting the real thing up here. We have to take it seriously in our not a LARP, but in their Skittles shit with all this, right? The thing can hold power, obviously. Not for us, but I'm saying, look at that symbol right there. Just look at it, even on the surface, and it's off-putting. It's alarming. The one next to it, right, looks like we've got what looks like a Templar cross on I guess a gravestone right there. I don't know what that, who that stands for. But these are Crowley. And Crowley, I think, made these in his interpretations of the Solomonic key rituals and in the Goetia. And if you need any further, thought about the results of this stuff, just look at Al Crowley, right? Al Crowley doing these rituals, being just a toad man, right? The real alarming thing is the influence that this stuff really did have throughout the 20th century and into now. Not just like, rappers wearing, his motto on a t-shirt, but like the way that things are in general, like low down regular society now. His things have permeated that. I said a couple of streams ago that when I watched this documentary years ago, and they said that, he foresaw a new religion called Crowleyanity, and I thought that was a fucking joke. That sounds gray. But now when I watch it, I'm like, that's true, but not in the sense that they meant it. His thing, his religion, his Thelema religion thing has now, it really has proliferated, right? The religion of the self, the worship of the self as a god, transcend, like interest in crystals instead of, the desire for people to have the ability to do special things through blatant sorcery and sort of wizard activities, and not as a LARP, but like really do those things, right? And I think the movie is kind of one example of that. It's clearly influenced by Crowley, even right there blatantly on the surface. So that's the reason I'm sort of showing this stuff. I'm showing it so you can go get this fucking shit out of here. So you know what? Now, be gone. Get out of there. And now, Matty, please continue. I'm sorry to interrupt. You were given an excellent narrative arc. So please continue for the folks at home.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I do want to say real quick before I complete the plot recap is I want to echo what you said, because I think everything you said there I back 100%, and I agree with, and I get it. Yeah, like these symbols are off-putting. What, like a symbol I've seen often, like I see it cropping up in tattoos. Like I see people around is the is it the sigil of Leviathan, the one that's got like the infinity kind of looking symbol with the cross with the multiple bars. I see like people with tattoos of that all the time, and a lot of times it's people who otherwise
see that on the Oreo cookie.
Yes,
literally. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's which is one of the reasons I stopped eating Oreos. No joke. Like that's actually why. And that's something you'll see. Like sometimes it's people who otherwise seem normal, and then you'll see that, or maybe they have a tattoo of like the sigil of Lucifer, some of these things. It's pretty, it's troubling. But and I will say that, like, I don't watch paranormal, the supernatural horror kind of movies. That's just, I'm not really into horror at all. And I don't, I never watched Paranormal Activity. I didn't watch any of these, hauntings and whatevers. But this movie, it's a gnarly movie. It's disturbing, but I'm glad I watched it because it shows, I think, the real world, the ends of what happens to this. And like you mentioned, Aleister Crowley, he was supposed to be this ascended, like, great guy. He died like a penniless, pathetic junkie. He was like strung out on morphine, was totally forgotten. He was a joke. And we see the real, and the people. It's funny because people who are into Satanism, it's like, these people, they see themselves as they're like these. It's a very kind of social. There's a big social Darwinist streak that runs through it. But if you look at the people, and I'm not saying this to like bash the actors, but it's like these people. It's not a bunch of 6'7" chads and like volleyball players. Like these are kind of weird, dumpy, sort of gross looking people.
Scene in Top Gun. They just recruited the scene in Top Gun, the volleyball scene, like
Yeah.
the Levate. Hanging with the boys.
Yeah, Kenny Loggins is like in the back strumming in like a Kramer guitar or something. But yeah, it's not. But anyway, but what I'm getting at is it shows the real world harm that it does to people. Now, again, if you listen to people like Isaac, people like Jamie Hanshaw, they'll talk about that. These people who are into this stuff for real, they don't, like, they're warped, basically. They don't see things the same way. So they don't see any problem with doing harm to other people like that. That doesn't faze them, but it shows, you see the anguish and the terror and the wake of the destruction that's left in their wake, and all the evil and these unsuspecting people who are basically just consumed by grief and desperation, and they're just a means to an end for these people to try to achieve something, and they don't care how much it hurts people who dies as a result of this, because, like I said in that prayer, we want riches, and we want good social standing,
good familiars,
good familiars, right? We want to be among people we see as being equal to us, and so
yes, they want to bind humanity to them as the conjurer, as they are bound to Paimon, right? All
yes.
humanity.
Yes, that was good. Yes, thank you. I forgot that line. That was very revelatory, I think.
Which is one more thing. By the way, that is straight up. I mean, that is pretty much what Berkowitz meant in his confessions about his MO and doing the things in the first place. That those the people that he did that to would be bound to him as hell slaves. In the darkness for all time. That they would be his legions that he would control. Right.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, in the Goetia, how Paimon is described, right, as appearing with legions, and then if the conjurer invokes whatever, the fucking magic ring or whatever it is they have, that they do this, that he will appear by himself, but still with his two familiars, right, who always attend him. That's why at the end of the film, when the climax occurs, you hear again the sound of, like soaring trumpets, then you hear like jingling bells, and then you hear music, because he's always like accompanied by like a train of musicians, right? Which gives credence to the Zeppelin type stuff with this, and the what's the violinist name? Paganini, is it Paganini? Right? Is that the virtuoso violinist they said soul to soul? Who's the guy? Paganini? Not Pagliacci. Pagliano, not that guy. That's the sad clown. But same thing occurs in The Witch. When the thing occurs in The Witch, right? Wouldst thou like to live fergaliciously? A taste of butter, a pretty dress, remove thy ship. Right when you hear the voice finally of like Black Phillip, who's now she's conjured Lucifer through a series of things that also like mirror Hereditary. When he finally appears, you see behind her in the darkness, you see the goat hoof of Black Phillip like stepping, and then the next step is a human, like what looks like a human shoe, and you hear bells. You hear the sound of bells, like he's jingling. And you mentioned that a lot of these damn demon dogs are tricksters, right? Like in the Norse pantheon, I mean, Loki is often described as a trickster.
Mm-hmm.
And people think of that as like, the jester comes from that. That's light. He's entertaining, but it's not. It's the trickster, as in like playing a joke on you and laughing in your face.
Yeah.
Right. Just for the sake of seeing the horror. And you're exactly right. The amount of pain and suffering and just the all of that in the movie is meant to show you that the whole purpose of this thing is on a human level, as AJ would say, Depop, right? But on a Miltonian level, a Paradise Lost, the satanic monologue at the beginning, the soliloquy in book 1 of Paradise Lost, he says that his whole purpose is to reign in hell, right? Rather than serve in heaven, and to destroy creation. He's heard about creation, mankind, to slip into the garden as a serpent and to lie, to accuse, and to destroy, right? God's brilliant, beautiful soldiers, beautiful dogs. They were, remember last night, beautiful soldiers. I love the beautiful soldiers. That's what he said. No, but beautiful humanity. Life is fiery with its beauty. Satan wants to make humanity fiery with its torment and pain. All these people, everything they do is just lies. It's just lies, accusations, underhanded activity, deviance, degradation, depravity. And I guess the cult thinks that, that they're fine with that as long as they get a little bit of power, right? As they get to rule over, because they like those things. Why can't they just go? Listen, man, you need to just go out, get some friends, go bowling, right? Get a hobby, right? Get into, fly some drones, get a girlfriend. You don't have to do all this shit. It's so bad. If the son had continued doing what he was doing at the beginning of the movie and being just a normal, kind of, bong smoking kid with his friends, he had friends, right? When he had that attack with his chest, like he was like, hold my hand. One of his friends held his hand. You probably think he's a little weird, but they would understand considering what he's been through. Right.
Yeah. And like they tell him like, oh no, man, like you're good. It's just the weed. Like because they assume he's just getting paranoid. They're not trying to mess with him. They're like, no, you're good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. He wasn't Skittles. He wasn't a simp going after that girl. He was trying to just get the girl, which was fine. He was, sitting behind her in class, checking out that trunk. Right. Which is normal for a kid like that to do. When she turns around and looks at him, he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like
the teacher's like, Peter, are you with us? Tell us about Oedipus, please. And he's like, where do I start? And the guy's like, that's normal.
Yeah.
His friend texts him, hey man, want to smoke a bowl after class? And he's like, yeah. I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like normal 16-year-old things.
Yeah.
There was one thing, and this was just something I noticed because I'm currently part of a book club and we're reading through the Iliad. And at one point they're actually talking about I think it's the Iliad because you could only hear bits and pieces, but they mention, I think it was Odysseus, and they mentioned Nestor, who are both characters in the Iliad. And I don't think, that's probably just, because that's something you would discuss in high school. Maybe not now. I don't know about now.
I think they were talking about Oedipus. Or Sophocles. It wasn't, because they mentioned Heracles. What was it? They were, good. I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm gonna look.
No, you're good. I specifically mentioned him saying something about Nestor. And it's been years since this is my first time reading the Iliad. I haven't read the Odyssey, and I don't know how long it's been since I was like middle school. I'm gonna read that one next, but anyway, I don't know, but he mentioned Nestor, and I don't think that was intentional on this front, but it was interesting to me because we see these people interacting with Paimon directly, and what we see in the Iliad is people interacting with the Greek gods directly. So they have direct interaction with them, so like, what was it, one of the warriors like sliced, I think it was, Athena's arm, and they'll come down, like they'll talk to people and they'll pull people out of battles and things like that. So there's that kind of direct connection with these sort of demonic deities. But yeah, just to cap off the plot synopsis is, so Peter, he runs into the attic, and we see that Annie is like on the wall, like Spider-Man, like banging her head on the attic door, trying to get in. And he's apologizing. He's like, "Mom, I'm sorry. Like, don't." And then he starts seeing people in the attic with him. And then he looks up, and Annie is floating at the top of she's gotten into the attic. She's floating at the top, and it looked like a wire or something, but she was removing her own head in a very graphic and gruesome manner. And she's just staring at him while she does it.
Yes,
exactly. It's sort of gratuitous, and it's very unsettling. And so then he dives out of, there's a window in this in the attic, and he dives out, and then he lands in the garden, and he or the flower bed, and he kind of looks up, and he sees Annie's now headless body, like you were talking about earlier, floating up into the treehouse. And so then he starts seeing these people around him, these naked figures that just look like average everyday kind of people. So then he goes up into the treehouse, and that's where we see, like we talked about earlier, where we see this kind of obvious figure of what what's supposed to be Paimon. We talked about that already. And so then Annie's headless body and Charlie's headless body, and her, she's all kind of like decomposed, but they're wearing these white dresses. Which is because I don't think Annie wears light, and Charlie, they don't wear light clothing in any other. They're always wearing dark clothing. Everybody in the movies wearing dark clothing.
Charlie wears red. She wears a red sweater because it's like
the
blood, foreshadowing the blood from her neck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good catch. I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, that's a good catch on that. And so they're like kneeling down, like bowing before this deity. And then again, I think it was Joni who was giving this prayer, and then she puts a crown on Peter's head, and that's the end of the movie. Now, Peter, it was hard to gauge exactly what was going on, because it's like he was in shock and was sort of overwhelmed, and it's almost like he just kind of resigned himself to whatever was happening, because I think he realizes whatever's happening here is completely and totally outside of his control. He is an unwilling victim who almost like becomes a willing victim. He sort of surrenders to this because there's nothing else he can do, because he's been tormented.
Can I give my interpretation of his facial expression right there? So I think that when he defenestrates himself out the window, which is the window we saw at the beginning, and the flies, the fly on the wall, we're seeing all this happen, flies right from the Lord of the Flies. Who's the Lord of the Flies? Beelzebub, right? We think of Beelzebub. There's the rotting corpses in the attic. We hear that the grave has been desecrated and the body's been dug up. Now, whether the cult dug the body of the grandmother up or whether Paimon himself, I think Paimon has the ability to possess the dead, right? So this is like necromancy in action. He rises himself out of the grave. Like you mentioned, the goal that we learned from this whole thing was that the grandmother would try to conjure Paimon in reality. She tried to use her husband. Her husband goes insane because of this. Her son, obviously we can read into this that she tried to use her son as the vessel for Paimon. That's why she put people in him because he's hearing demonic voices. Right. He's being driven mentally ill and spiritually ill until he smokes himself. Then she has a daughter. Paimon doesn't want a female vessel, but the daughter has a daughter who's Charlie. They name her Charlie because it's an ambiguous name, and the child is possessed from the beginning. That's why I think that's why Charlie and her facial expressions and the way she is, like, she has no reaction to things. Like when the bird dies, she doesn't look. She's eating that Snickers bar, but she goes off, grabs the talisman of the bird, the sacrifice. Later, she sees visions of the grandmother in white, like with the fire. We see the grandmother, who's the main, she's the driving force behind this, even though she's dead from the beginning of the movie. She's in the portrait where the portrait is weird. It looks almost hallucinatory, like she's moving even in the portrait, because our perspective changes. And while we go through the room, it's slightly different. She's kind of looking up, like she's looking to the northwest. She's initiated this is like true SRA stuff, right? The cult is in on it. They work in all these normal places, and then they show up, and then they're stripped naked as, acolytes of this demon. The actual people use the word gangstalking a lot, but this is real. This is actual in the film. They're doing things to the family that they don't understand. We also get the question about fate versus free will. It seems like Charlie and Peter, no matter what they do, are driven by this thing, outside of themselves, where they don't have any choices. They have small choices, but by the time, like, the fatalistic choices that are driving the cult, like, take hold of them, they can't get out of it, right? Which I think is probably still free will. It's just that their will is overridden by the demonic will of these people to get their thing accomplished. Anyway, the sacrifice with Charlie, right? Charlie isn't the vessel that Paimon wants. That's why she's beheaded at the ritualistic place with the pole with the sigil on it. And I think from there, that's when the possession begins of Peter, right? Who is slowly put through a series of things that break his mind, his spirit, and his body that he doesn't understand until he's at school and the woman appears and literally exorcises his soul out of his body, or at least that's what she thinks she's doing, to invoke Paimon. But then the final possession can only occur after this series of the worst things: the burning, the attempted burning of the book. The mother goes crazy. The mother is a somnambulist, right? Sleepwalking, trying to burn her son, but that's actually, we know that it's not sleepwalking, it's just possession, right? And until finally this thing occurs, he jumps out the window. I think he dies at that point, and then he goes up into the thing, and then the final adorning of the crowning of the demon occurs. And the reason that he looks the way that he does with no expression is because that really is his body with this hell, pseudo, what is it? The pseudo monarchica demonum, this actual, prince of hell inside of him that they've conjured. And he doesn't have the expressions of the human beings because it's a different zone, a different, dimension, right? That's why the demon doesn't speak to any of them. He doesn't use language. He uses like movement and messages. And we hear constant in the background. You notice that we hear like growling and groaning, oftentimes like masked by bangs or other things in the house, but you can hear it like in the background, this groaning, growling hell sound. And the only time he really speaks, the demon himself like speaks in the movie, is through the mother when she's doing her, she's about to levitate and she's doing her, she's doing all that shit. Right. So he, they all end up as these sort of unwitting pawn pieces and vessels, which is appropriate as, pawn pieces because of the dolls. It's kind of a mixed metaphor, but like the dolls within the dollhouse. The mother thinks that she's making the dollhouse of all the realistic events because she's an artist, but in reality, she's but a plaything to the gods, as it says in King Lear. They kill us for their sport, right? Their actual life is the dollhouse. They exist in this prison, Right. And it takes the cults to come in and, they hide in the corners. She's levitating up in the corner. So you noticed, I thought that was interesting that, when he's in bed, you don't really see her in the dark in the corner of the room. And a lot of people watch this movie and they don't actually see her. They just sort of sense something's wrong. And then on rewatch, they notice that she's like up in the corner in the ceiling. But I think that's important because throughout the foreshadowing is like, we see all these things, and they're not jump scares, but they prepare us for this eventual series of horrible things. The guy on fire, the self-decapitation, the burning of the book, the jumping out the window, the screams. Probably the worst thing in this movie, the most horrific thing, is the Toni Collette screaming after she finds Charlie. Right? Remember, she's on the floor of the bedroom. She's saying, she says she wants to die.
Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. Like it goes on. It's like the scene. Like this is something I think that Astor did really well. Is like, if you remember that scene, I think it's in episode 1, the pilot episode of Twin Peaks, where they're getting the letter out from under the corpse's fingernail. And in that scene, it doesn't go on too long to where it becomes gratuitous, but it's enough to. It's kind of disturbing, but it's enough to make you extremely uncomfortable. And this is the same kind of thing. It goes on just long enough. It's very unsettling. It kind of puts your teeth on edge, and you're like, ugh, like I don't like this. Like I don't want to be watching or listening to this. And the same thing with her kind of wailing after Charlie's death. And one of the things is Charlie's name was actually Charles, because when they show the doormat,
Charles Carroll?
Yes, it was Charles Carroll. Was actually the daughter. Spoiler alert, but which I thought was kind of interesting. So I don't know if that had anything to do with Payman, possess. Like I don't know. Anyway, but one thing I did forget to mention, because we've talked about Joni a lot and kind of how she ties into this, is when Annie is going through that box of these occult books, she finds a photo album, finds all these photos of her mother with these people, and then she finds a bunch of photos of her with Joni, right? This woman who supposedly is just this grieving woman that she met at a Grief Anonymous meeting or whatever it is. And we realize, like, no, this woman is basically carrying on the great work, you might say, that Ellen Lee had started. That was something I did forget to mention that I think is important for
the great work in the Babylon working. Babylon, go and get your screw face. Yeah, the working. Yeah, which is what Crowley and all these people call it. The
Alistair Morley.
Go on, Alistair Marley living down there on Point Beach, Hastings. Man on all the junk here, shooting the junk. The man, the magician, sorcerer. Papa Leg, Alistair Crowley down there, Papa Legba.
And then Dr. John starts singing out of nowhere.
I was confused, Dr. John. Dr. John is Nolan's, right? And he always had that feather in his cap. And then, I saw him at a festival a few years ago. He was like, "Yeah, on down on the shrimp on the tracks."
That's basically every Dr. John song. But yeah, Widespread Panic did a really good job. One of his. Anyway, getting off track here. I don't mean to keep. There's Odysseus was mentioned.
Yeah, you were right, by the way. Yeah, it was the Odyssey.
It was the Odyssey. Oh, it was the Odyssey.
Because I saw I am nobody. The Cyclops says, "I am nobody." That's where Nemo comes from. Captain Nemo. That's what it's translated as Nemo. Nemo means no man. So this is it's the Odyssey that they're learning. And then they mentioned Heracles, and I just thought I heard when they were talking, I thought I heard him mention Oedipus, but I guess it was Odysseus.
They might have, because there were multiple classroom scenes. That was just the only one I noticed what the teacher was talking about.
Well, I thought
about Nestor.
I guess I kind of confused it over time, or maybe I didn't, because I think in the script, Peter was supposed to end up blind. He was supposed to, take his own eyes out, or he was going to end up physically blind. And then they didn't do that because it didn't fit the rest of the ritual or whatever. But it would in a way, if they had done that, make sense in a Oedipal sense, because the whole thing with Oedipus and Oedipus Rex, you can go back and watch my analysis, you guys. It was one of the first ones I did. Oedipus Rex, one of the things people forget, people often, focus on the Freudian and the Jim Morrison elements, right? Father, yes, son, I want to kill, all that stuff. But the end of the play is important because he ends up, blinding himself. And it's one of the great few examples of a classical tragedy that doesn't end in death. It ends in exile and a very specific, unique type of self-mutilation. And he does that because the word eye, or, eyes, or see, or vision, like, appears so many times in the play leading up to that as a kind of, foreshadowing code. And when Oedipus finds out that he is the unwitting actor in his own demise, he's cursed himself from the very beginning. The play begins with him cursing the people who have committed some sort of degrading sin that has caused the plague in Thebes, right? And he says he won't stop until he finds out who's done it, but it ends up that it's him. He's the one, right? And that, of course, that he's married his mother. He didn't know that she was his mother, and that he killed his own father, and he didn't know that. So, of course, he blinds himself to everything that he's done. And it sort of makes sense if they had chosen that with this, because even not having him like literally blind himself, I mean, he is blind. Peter is blind, and also he resembles Oedipus in the way that since the beginning, since birth, he's been on this course, and every action that he makes, everything he chooses to do, still pushes him in this direction where he can't escape his reckoning, right? Because the sins of the fathers have done this to him in the ancient world. And it's hard to decipher a free will versus fate argument with these works, but with this, it's like one choice that he makes, which is the wrong choice, is that when the thing happens with his sister in the car, and he's sitting in the road, and he kind of looks in the rearview mirror and then turns away, he can't look at it, and then just goes home and goes to sleep. That was a choice that he made in the movie. He was not himself at that moment. He was sort of, that's like a thing that would make D.I.D, right? The brain trying to compensate, like, and retreating in light of what's just happened. But all those things he did, he made those decisions, and he did that. Speaking of which, by the way, drink. It's also weird. I always thought it was weird that the mother is like, take your sister to this party. And like, that was weird to me and not very cool. Cause it would be one thing if the sister was like, 3 years younger than him, or they were both in high school, but like she's like, what, 12, I think?
13, I think is what they said.
Oh, 13. And how old is
he's 16.
Okay. So there's only a 3 year. Okay. But still,
she seems younger than she is, though. Like she doesn't seem like a 13-year-old. She seems like she's more like 10 or 11.
Yeah. And if you want her to like socialize, that party that's not going to help,
Yeah. And
absolute wrong place to take her in every way.
Yeah, terrible place where there's a bunch of high schoolers like eating cake and drinking Trulies and White Claw or whatever. And then one of the and also because I was struck by some of the rap songs they were playing at the party. I mean, maybe this is just being too much of like I don't think it's such a thing as being too much, but just basically like literally being Hank Hill, is I was listening to these like very explicit, gross rap songs playing in the background, and I'm like, why is there a child at this party?
It's entirely too loud in here. Yes. I have diabetes. Wilford Brimley at the Kids' Choice Award. Presenting
get
tonight,
slimed.
Chad Chattinson, C. Zachary Chad, Purple Stuff, and $411. Hosted by Wilford Brimley. First presenter, Lacrosse Guy Smile. He says, I don't know any of these people. No, yeah, I mean, they're sitting there listening to what song are they listening to? If it were 20 years before, it would be bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it's like, what are they listening to? It's not Young Lean. It's probably like
it's something like super gross and explicit. Yeah, actually, they probably listen to the Ben Folds cover of that song. That would that if it was like 15 years ago, that'd be the jam.
I remember it was Ben Folds 5, and then it
Mhm.
changed to Ben Folds, right?
What happened to the 5? That's all I want to know. They're on Fox News now.
Ben Folds, Ben told his bandmates to hit the Ben Rick rolled Ben Folds, more like Ben holds himself because he's lonely. He's just got a piano.
That sounds right. That seems like Ben Folds. He's just like sitting in his studio, just like in the fetal position.
I saw that
hugging himself.
They took down I think they took down like the original Rick roll video.
Oh, really?
Like the original one, which had 400 trillion views or whatever on it. It's a new era. It's called Cyber Polygon First Victim Rick Roll.
The idea that they would take down the original Rick Roll. Anyway,
Ben Folds reminds me of that dude. Remember that guy Ben Harper?
Yes, I remember. I used to get them confused. Actually, I would always mix up Ben Harper and Ben Folds.
I always thought Ben Harper was supposed to be in the same universe as like first Dave Matthews and then like Elliott Smith, and both of those are nothing. No, I guess Elliott Smith's world is like that guy. Who's that guy? Bright Eyes.
Conor Ober. Yeah, I've seen him live twice. Great performer. Great songwriter.
Yeah. Well, I saw Elliott Smith
at
the 930 Club. Yeah, not long before before the passing. Yeah.
Before whatever his girlfriend's name, stuck him with a steak knife or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yes. That was, somebody fact check me on that. Elliott
Allegedly.
Smith, that was, fact check me on this. That was, hold on. Let's see. No,
because he died in 2009?
November 12th, 2000. It would be 2003. Somebody fact check me. November 12th, 2003.
Earlier. I was thinking it was 2009, but I think it was like 2005 or 2004.
It was Elliott Smith was 2003, definitely.
Oh, it was 2003. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, they said his girlfriend did a Gangs in New York William cutting on him. Closest thing in nature to the flesh of a man is the flesh of a pig. Here you go, mother. She's not really my mother. I know that, Bill. Remember that part in Gangs in New York? What's this word? What's this word say? It says ghoul, Bill. Ghoul. That's a good word. Yeah, apparently. I mean, I don't know what happened. I do know that one of my friends is friends with Elliott Smith's engineer, the guy where he recorded his albums, and also we all here know a guy who was, I'm pretty sure he was we were talking about Hunter S. Thompson earlier. I think he was at that funeral because he was close with Hunter S. Thompson, like towards the end. Had something to do with him through film. We know that guy. Great guy. You want me to tell you who he is?
Yes, please.
Great guy. Yeah, he knew not Elliott Smith, Hunter S. Thompson well. Corey, that would be Wandering Wolf from Boiler Room.
Really? No way. I didn't realize.
And also another factoid about Wandering Wolf, born on the exact same day as me.
Like same year and everything?
Same everything. Yeah.
Oh, that's
like 2 hours apart. Isn't that wild?
Huh.
That's pretty cool. He's my brother. He's me. I'm him.
Literally the same person. Before we get into this article, I wanted to mention, because one thing that came to mind is another not a film, a series that we are going to cover at some point, folks. We've talked about it a lot on many streams. Is True Detective season 1, the cult of the Yellow King, right? And we see the same kind of thing. Now, granted, I think it's not explicitly stated, but it's implied that the Tuttle family, who are a big part of this cult, now they have much more wealth and power and influence than anybody that's sort of in this movie who's in the cult. Now we don't know specifically who these people are, or and also another movie with a cult is Under the Silver Lake, and so these are just seemingly normal kind of people who are into this really bizarre kind of thing. Now the Under the Silver Lake cult is different from they're basically doing it to themselves, right? They're not doing these kinds of taking out other people. They're just like, oh, we're going to go basically unalive ourselves, right? But whereas there is a lot of now, with True Detective season 1, I think it's more direct because they are doing it. They're doing, you could say, arguably worse things to people. We're not going to. You don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, the point being is that we see these same overlaps, and it's basically just for a little bit of money and power and influence during your time on Earth. It's like you're going to do all of this evil to other people and carry out the worst things on others just so you can make an extra 50 grand a year or something. It's really an insane way of thinking. It's just totally untethered from reality. It's like these people, they don't people who are into that kind of thing, they don't think the same way as normal people.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them, especially in the wake of True Detective. A bunch of these that have come out, which a lot of them we see and then they kind of get forgotten about. One of them is The Apostle that was on that. It's still on Netflix, which is it's not great, but it is another cult movie that deals with a kind of pseudo pantheistic cult that kind of crosses over into, if you've ever read Eaters of the Dead, so there was Beowulf and then Eaters of the Dead, Michael Crichton, and then that became the 13th Warrior, the film with Antonio Banderas, which kind of also they sort of resemble the Morlock cult in the Time Machine, H.G. Wells' Time Machine, a little bit, like how they are. They live in the earth and they're kind of feeding on humans or whatever. But that's in The Apostle. There are a few of these. One of these has like a sort of cryptid theme. There's a kind of Yellow King-esque aesthetic to it, but it like turns out to be an actual cryptid. There was this movie with, if anybody's seen this, let me look up his filmography. If anybody's seen this movie with Ethan Hawke, that came out, here we go. I don't know if anybody's seen this. It came out a few years ago, and it's got what's her name from Harry Potter? What's her name?
Emma Watson.
Yes, Emma Watson, who, by the way, her best role is in The Bling Ring. Anybody seen that?
Oh, Sofia Coppola. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually, that movie's actually, it's not bad. Yeah, she's in The Bling Ring, but she was in this movie called, where is it? First Reformed. Here it is. Regression. This movie right here. So this movie, I'll let you read this. Look right here. They detain him, but fail to find evidence against him. Detectives suspect a what is involved because of Angela's testimony, in which Angela says she was, that by people in masks and someone took pictures of it.
Whoa.
Involving satanic rituals. Angela tells him that the cult is out to kill her, as she has shown her demonic mark to him, and that he is in danger as well. She is an SRA victim in this, and they have a scene in the film, which is, I was wondering how they were going to, depict this and whether they were going to go there. And they did it's, you don't want to see this, but it's pretty disturbing. But the point of the movie is that, look right here, this is part of the hysteria, they say, referring to assertions made during the certain panic in the US and in other countries. And they still talk like this. This will never change. I mean, they still talk like this. When in fact, this all comes from the Finders and the and McMartin. But it also comes from a stream. I did a stream on the guy Colonel Jeffrey McDonald. It's called Fatal Vision. He was the Green Beret. He was the title comes from a Macbeth quote, right? Art thou not fatal vision, a dagger of the mind. And this guy was a Green Beret at Fort Bragg. And then all of a sudden there was a phone call, and his family ended, like the authorities came, and his family they were all gone, right? In the house. They were not alive. And they took him in, and he claimed that he had come home and discovered him like this, and that this was a cult that had done this. Like he stated it was a satanic cult on the base that had done it. And he was tried, retried. He was innocent, guilty, all this stuff. Ted Gunderson, remember Uncle Ted G, was one of the guys involved with this. He talked a lot about this. He, eventually, like, they tried to discredit him as being, for being part of this. But then there were witnesses. Like, there was a daughter of a general who claimed she was in the thing. There were people who'd witnessed it and all this stuff. And there's like no resolution. The resolution is that he did it and it was part of the cult. I think probably it was both. But there's no, it'll just stay like that. But that book itself, Fatal Vision, was the thing that kicked off the true crime sort of craze, that and Helter Skelter. Fatal Vision. But yeah, I mean, this movie, obviously, the Hereditary is clearly part of a new, a neo horror genre that has changed. It hasn't really followed through. I mean, because the Northman and the films that followed, even Midsommar, didn't really go in the same direction. I understand they want to change, how they make movies and have different subjects. I think this might be part of a trilogy, by the way. There might be a third. There was Hereditary, Midsommar, and then there might be a third that deals with this. It won't be the Nosferatu movie. But who knows? Maybe Nosferatu, I'm sure, will have elements of this in it. And I say that because I did read that Ari Aster said that his intention was to make something that was truly a horror movie, right? And that, horror movies aren't really like scary. And I think he did a decent job with this. Hereditary, certainly original, and I think it's good in that sense because it takes all of the elements of what we know from horror movies and it kind of does away with those. And it's a psychological movie that works on your on religion, spirituality, and it ends up depicting the very thing that you could not imagine they're going to depict. Like when I first watched this, I could not imagine it was going to end the way that it did. I was like, I can't believe they're actually doing this. Same with The Witch. The Witch ends in the same way. Ascension, right? She joins the coven. She ascends. She's floating in the air, and she's happy. Midsommar, same thing. She goes through the initiation, and she's got a smile on her face. So, in a way, stunning and brave in a way to depict that, because it wouldn't work if you went through that whole thing and then it didn't work in the end. Like, of course, it's going to work for these, fucking people, right? Ari Aster's independent movies on YouTube are disturbing as heck. Yeah, I'm sure. I've heard about those. I don't really want to watch those. Also, even the name, we can't, not mention this. Ari Aster, right? Aster, Astaroth, Aster, ad Astra per Aspera. It sounds like what was the thing in the Ninth Gate? The Order of the Silver Star. There was the AA, Astra Argentum, the Crowley initiatory rite, the circle within the circle during Golden Dawn. It's clearly, I mean, even his name, right, invokes this. You're walking into it and you're like, is this guy's just he's not in this thing, then he's clearly like, how is it? I don't know, man. Sorry, y'all. I'm kind of rambling with that. But do you understand what I'm saying? Do you even understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, this seems like there are certain movies and films and books and things or movies and films, movies and series and things like that where you can't make something like that unless you are familiar with it on a deeper level. Now, that's not to say that everybody. So, like Twin Peaks, for example, right? We all know what Twin Peaks is really about. I'm not saying David Lynch is involved in anything nefarious. I don't think, I personally, I don't know the guy. I don't think he's involved in anything weird or nefarious. Aside from transcendental meditation, that's weird. But anything like really dark, I don't think he is. But he clearly understands. He knows. Same thing with like Nick Pizzolatto, right? Making True Detective seasons 1, 2, and 3. He knows how the world really works. But when it comes to these kinds of things, I mean, the level, and I'm sure there's a lot of things I miss just because I don't have that level of familiarity. And I only know these things, from listening to people like Jay and Jamie and Isaac and others. I don't read this kind of stuff. I don't have like an occult library or anything. Like I don't really want to have any kind of deep familiarity with it. But I think with this is he clearly, there's a deeper understanding to this. And I think that also if you look at something like, I mean, the ending of the movie, like there's really not many truly good, or if there's not maybe any like truly good, virtuous kind of characters in this film. I think Steve tries, but clearly, like in this one, evil wins in the end. And so it's not. Now, obviously, I don't. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, everything has to have a happy ending. Like I'm not that naive, right? I don't have a problem with endings. Me not being quote unquote happy. I prefer that, but yeah, I mean, this is like no, these evil, wicked people who are doing this. Again, just to not to keep repeating myself, but just to get ahead a little bit in life, they ultimately win in the end, right? And this demon god that's like their depiction of him is just a total blasphemous mockery of Christ. Like these are truly horrible, just like the worst kind of people in the world who would do anything to anybody if it might mean that they could get ahead a little bit. They win. And in the end, like they triumph over these people. And so I think that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know anything about Ari Aster. I don't I haven't even read his Wikipedia page. I only know about some of the movies he's done. But I think to make a film like this, you've got to be in something. I mean, maybe he just went and researched this, maybe listen to a bunch of Isaac Weishaupt podcasts. I don't know, but
He's an OG granola wokester.
Yeah. Yeah, he was Isaac's first Patreon supporter. But anyway, I still have to say that I do think, again, I'm not accusing him of being into anything illegal or nefarious. I have no idea, but this isn't a movie that someone who's just kind of like a casual, because it's all too focused. Because some of these movies or series or things where people are like, "Ooh, maybe let's get something like occult or esoteric," and again, like I said earlier, there's a lot of overlap with this, but it might, they'll like throw things in there that don't make any sense. And there was this like Netflix show, I think it was called The Order, that I tried to watch, and it had this kind of like esotericism aspect to it, but it was sort of incoherent. It didn't really make any sense. It was kind of, oh, let's just pull from this and that or whatever is popular. But this is very focused, and it's very precise, and it's clear this guy knows. And I'd only ever heard of payment. Like this guy knows way more about this and knew how to tie it together in a way that makes total sense. And yeah, I mean, and Kick Against the Prick says that A24 films are dark and cringe. I don't think they're all cringe. I think some of them are, but yeah, I mean, they are really dark kind of films where, you know, the protagonists are not good people. And yeah, there's just kind of a sort of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I don't know. They are, there's a darkness in those films that is kind of unsettling because it's not really, I don't really get, last thing I'll say on this, I don't really get scared. The last thing that scared me, I was like 10 and I saw Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and it absolutely terrified me. But that was the last thing I saw. And Twin Peaks was eerie and creepy and unsettling, but you know, a lot of this, it's not scary in the sense like, oh, you know, I'm going to go hide under the blanket or anything while watching it. But it's scary in the sense, something like this is scary because, yeah, some of it's sort of, you know, really supernatural and seems very unrealistic. But this is the kind of thing you could definitely see happening in real life, and things like, you know, they're cases like what we know, these you know, similar kinds of things have happened of you know, innocent people being victimized for the, you know, whatever the goals of like very evil demonic people are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I agree with you on the point that, you know, I think coming up with this sorts of material, I think I think that's a complex point. I mean, I don't think that it takes life experience or like living or experiencing the thing to create it. I know you're not saying that. Um, but this is like certainly on another level, right? It's very specific and on another. I mean, even just coming up with the name of the villain in this movie, right? And the sigils and the, you know, it either conveys deep research into this um experience or just, you know, interest or imagination. Doesn't mean, you know, you're part of it or whatever, but it's certainly I don't think that movies, I've said this a million times, I don't think that movies and especially literature have a moral like a fable does, right? They, you know, we're not trying to figure out a puzzle piece, and that they all, you know, have this thing that we figure out and we go, oh, that's it, right? Now, on the other hand, great art does have a sort of a code to it. I mean, even in the simplest terms, like looking at a sonnet, right? The code is in one part the rhyme scheme. That's part of a sort of a code. Um, Words themselves are, you know, interpretive. We have concrete and abstract nouns and knowledge and thoughts and act versus actions and all sorts of things. Um, I think that, you know, I guess probably equating this guy again, like I don't know, and I'm not defending him or anything. Equating this guy and his what he's made here to kind of, you know, life experience is in a way like saying that, you know, Shakespeare had to have been in a cult or a coven to make Macbeth, which is probably even more extreme of an example. I mean, considering that Macbeth has the aura that it does, which lasts even to today, right? With bad luck, with disastrous productions. My example for that is even the Polanski Macbeth, right, was made right in the wake of the Charlie Manson events. And the blood that shows up in the movie was very new to cinema. I mean, Bonnie and Clyde was like the first to do that, and then this does it. And some of the actions in the film, the way that he as a filmmaker interpreted this and staged it, reflected the things that had happened to him in real life. Not to him, but to, you know, Sharon Tate. There's one scene in particular where, you know, a home is invaded and these things, you know, kind of occur. Um, Even the casting of Lady Macbeth, like she looks remarkably like Sharon Tate in the film. So it is strange. It's very weird. And many have said, scholars have said that the spells in Macbeth in the Witch's Coven are real. You know, they're real. The words are real, and that Shakespeare used those. Now, what would be the source of those? He didn't have to be part of those things, and they were kind of common, folkloric knowledge at the time, especially in Elizabethan and Jacobean Renaissance. John Dee was alive at the time, but King James himself had the book on demonology. People were like, this was a big thing at the time, much bigger, I think, than, like, for instance, in the 19th century, the craze with, like, seances and all that stuff, which again is in Hereditary. But we in our lives right now, we like, that's a thing now also. Anytime, you turn on Instagram and you see a dude like,
oh, I hope we didn't. Are we still going? I think BLA froze. Hopefully he'll be back here in a second. Let me know if y'all can still.
There we go. Okay, I'm back.
Okay,
We're back.
Okay,
We're back.
Cool.
Yeah. Crystal pyramid waves, the mud people, the Pleiadians. My favorite right now is you see this nice landscape right here, and you see this cave. Look down there. These are the Ents, the tree people, man. Those are the Nibiru's. And there's like a little Gumby like guy like walking. And he's like, many people don't know about the stick man. And they're like 8 inches tall. Have you seen those?
No,
Dude,
I don't think so.
That's the newest thing. There's Jerry. Shouts out to Jerry. Jerry, what's the name of those little creatures? They're not gnomes or goblins or anything. It's something unusual. They're like little stick men. Kind of like the mud man in Japan. They were fishing and like this guy like made of mud is like and comes out. The dudes on the motorcycle, they're riding down the trail, and the like woolly mammoth man is like chasing them. Have you seen that one? People are like, they're obsessed with either making or talking about this stuff now, obviously, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this, occult kind of stuff is crossed over into the mainstream. Like I remember, I used to work with this girl who was apparently into like witchcraft, and she was talking about like some like ritual or something she was going to do that night to another one of our coworkers. And I overheard this. Maybe in hindsight, I shouldn't have said this, but I was like, oh, well, have fun getting possessed. And she was like, I don't believe in that. And I was like, the existence of demons is not contingent on your belief in them. And I don't think she talked to me again after that. She didn't appreciate that. But I mean, like the college I went to, there was one of the colleges I went to, there was like an active coven of witches on campus. And so, I mean, this stuff is very real. And I think this is troubling because we're seeing it become mainstream, and like people are actually practicing it. And I'm not saying all these people are going to go into like a cult of what these people are in the movie are doing. But anyway, just point being that there's a lot of darkness out there, and people should be on the lookout for it and avoid it as much as possible.
Have fun tonight. Have fun tonight. Who you talking like that, huh? I know a guy that can help you. He's got a water slide. He wears angel's wings, right? And they play Leonard Skinner. No, but actually the Leonard Skinner Randy Balls thing makes me think of you ever seen them like they ride those horses on stage and like camels, right, with the water slide right next to it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you ever seen those mega churches?
Yeah.
Well, the camel, watch out, they spit. The camel makes me think of the description of Paimon, right? Which is that he is preceded by the sound of music and bells and a retinue and legions from hell or whatever. But also that he rides a dromedary, right? He rides a camel, which all this stuff obviously is. Again, these are lies. Like he will, it says in the Goetia, I think, that like he will only speak lies. His servants will only speak lies to you unless you have the secret whatever the thing is, you know, the perderabo ansutatis, and then he speaks the truth to you, right? But I mean, how it's also, is it truth, right? It's probably just it's what's the word when you speak the truth but it's amidst a bunch of lies? What is it? Damn it, what's the word, dude? Anyway, I'll think of it in a second. But yeah, so it's obviously supposed to be a kind of inversion, right, of Christ riding the donkey into Bethlehem.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Very good point.
Also, it also brings up the Middle Eastern, you know, roots of that are associated with a lot of these demons and stuff. And you think of the jinn, you know, conjuring and commanding jinn, which I did a stream on, and that you could have command over these things. We did Master and Margarita. I did Faust. I did Dr. Faustus, and Faust was eye-opening because it kind of is not the thing people expect it to be. You expect it to be that, you know, Faust sells his soul and then he's taken down to hell, like in Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. Metempsychosis, right? Curite, noctis equi. But in fact, in Goethe's Faust, that doesn't happen. In Master and Margarita, that doesn't happen, right? They are given grace, you know, God gives them grace, and they don't end up doing that. And also in Faust, when Mephistopheles comes to him, the deal that they make and the interaction that they have is not at all what people think of, like in the sort of public consciousness when they think of the Faustian bargain. Because Mephistopheles comes, first of all, he's got to be invited. There's only a certain amount of time he can stay, and the favors and the things that he does for Faust are, I guess Shakespeare said it best with Macbeth, right? When Banquo tells him after they meet the witches for the first time, and he says, you know, look, our partner's wrapped with all, like Macbeth is like wrapped. He's enraptured by what they've just told him that he could be king. But he says, oftentimes the instruments of darkness will win us with honest trifles only to betray us in deepest consequence, which is what they do in Hereditary, right? If you know, familiars, they'll give you riches, they'll make you smart and wise and all this stuff. But when you need it most and when it's most important, you will be tormented and in pain and be laughed at, because that's the whole purpose, right? There's a thing in movies and in real life where people are like, they have this thing where it's like, what would you do if the demon came to you and, you know, was tormenting you? And they're like, I don't know. I would, you know, if things are bad, they might as well give in, right? Because he'll help them and then you can outsmart him or whatever. And it's like, why would anybody take that route with things? Right?
Yeah, that's completely insane. Well, sometimes there's people just being edgelords, and I don't know if anybody actually believes that. They're just trying to be edgy.
I guess. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know.
When I think of edgelords, the picture in my mind is the ring wraiths.
Oh yeah,
the ring wraiths are like riding through the forest. I think it's edgelords. All right, buddy. Well, anything else you want to bring up? Any other topics that we can talk about? I mean, look, we've been going for a while. We've been going for what?
Almost 3 hours.
Yeah, almost 3 hours. And, you know, the movie, we've hit on a bunch of things, but the symbolism and the themes in the movie are pretty multifoliate. It takes endless rewatches, and we could do much more with this. Not now, but I'm saying people can do much more with this movie. And that is, I think, that's a positive, you know, that's a great sign, because even though this is even though it's creepy and all this stuff, and it's like you said, you know, evil triumphs in the end of the movie. It's a movie. Triumphs in the end of the movie. And also you were mentioning, you know, the people that win with this stuff. Well, in the end, these people are also, you know, they are in LARPer universe, right? The lady like hangs out in strip malls to try and, you know, it's like they aren't determining the power structure. But at the same time, the people that do that, they do this. Right?
Exactly.
So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, last thing on this. Yeah, I think again, I mean, you know, if this is something, you know, just the audience, if you feel like there's something that would deeply disturb you on a spiritual level, I get that, and you know, use your own discernment and make your own decisions. But I do think it is worth it. I do think it is worth watching. I think it's yeah. I mean, like you said, the symbolism there's a lot there. There's a lot of depth. And the last thing I was curious, because I didn't have time to do any research on
Yeah.
payment or anything. Do you know where this originates from? Is it from the Keys of Solomon, or does it? Because I'm like, I Googled payment because I was like, is this a real thing? I didn't even know it was a real thing. I never heard of it, so I didn't know it was a real thing. And then I saw that I just saw something like in the Wikipedia about I think it was the Lesser Keys of Solomon. Do you know where this, I mean, obviously, if it's just one of those things that just kind of sprang up in the ancient world, or do you know if there's a first mention or something of it somewhere?
Yeah, it is real. It is mentioned in the text, I think the Renaissance text.
Hmm.
This is the name of I guess recognized as one of the I've heard a couple of different things. One is that in the pantheon of the 9 princes of hell, that this is one of them. You know, there's this guy Beelzebub, Moloch, Baal, all this, all those dudes. And it's sort of similar to the Exorcist universe, right? With Pazuzu and Azazel and all these.
Mm-hmm.
And that each one of them has a different thing. You know, obviously Mammon is one of them. Mammon is like, money and consumption and stinks, and is slothful. Beelzebub represents death and corruption and all this. But he is first mentioned, as far as I know, in either, I think it's the Lesser Keys of Solomon, but he gets a sizable, like a sizable part of it. It's not just mentioned in passing. I think he's mentioned, like, there's one of the pages at the very beginning. He's also like said to be in that text the main attendant to Satan.
Interesting.
So the main guy, which is, we think of Beelzebub, right, in Paradise Lost.
Mm-hmm.
But Paimon, the reason they're trying to conjure this particular demon is because of the idea of creativity and riches and all this, right? But the demon is also, like, has a set of things that go along with his conjuring, which is that there's another demon that I think is his attendant mentioned in that book, that, like, his breath is poison. He can kill you with his breath, which again is an inversion, right? This is the opposite of, Genesis, the breath of life.
Mm-hmm.
And that the way to avoid this is that the conjurer has to utter certain phrases and, like, wear a certain token or ring or whatever to avoid it. All of these things, like, this is when we think about, like, secrets and secret societies and, watchwords and all this stuff. This is it. There's a series of tests that you have to go through when you first, like, conjure Paimon. The book says that he will ask you a question and you have to answer it correctly and in a certain order, in a certain way, to unlock it. And you can see, I remember watching an interview with the guy when I was in England who was, considered himself, he was like, no, I'm a sorcerer. Right. And it sounds funny. And I'm just some dude with, like, a computer job. But his thing was that, his life was, like, totally sucked, and it led him to be this alienated guy or whatever. And he found that he could have some sort of power through this. A lot of this is about power. And that this guy, like, truly believed that he could do things to, like, influence and control the weather. And, he could manifest money. He could make people do his will, which I think is, that's not just, like, LARPing. I think a lot of it is, but I think that there is that is a thing that's the point of sorcery and all this, Skittles shit. Right. Crowley himself was like, he could said he could command winds, make himself invisible, do all this shit. And who knows if it's true. I think the invisibility thing probably was, in a sense, very true. But the bigger thing is the power over others, and the power to, make people, even your unwitting slaves, right, to destroy their own sense of free will, as if they forget they even have it.
Yeah.
So you watch the movie and you go, why don't any of these people just at any time during the movie, just anyone, bust out a cross or a Bible or a prayer or something and be like, get out of here.
Right.
Right. Stop doing this shit. I understand you've been through a lot, but there's a way out of this. And you're in, lady, you are in like obviously severe pain. There's a lot that you have, but there's a way out of it because there is someone who can take away all that pain. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a total dearth of, like we said earlier, anything, religious in any kind of a, particularly Christian sense. There's last two things I'll say on this, so we can wrap up is, or at least one thing I may have forgotten the other, but anyway, is something I hadn't really thought. I was just thinking about it while we were talking, is because in the book where it's talking about, Paimon, he's this god of mischief, you have to do this ritual, lock it in, and then you have to do another ritual to like unpossess the person, which if you read any of these occult texts, which I've, read excerpts, I read like one book on alchemy, and then, I've read like excerpts from other things. A lot of this is just gibberish and nonsense. And there was somebody, I think it was like, who was that weird? Was it Julius Evola? I think he even said that a lot of the books, the occult books, are intentionally there to misdirect people. And it's sort of that only the true people who are like truly can see these things can, kind of cut through all the crap and see what's actually there. But I just say that to say that it's like, okay, this is the god that, they call him the god of mischief. I think he said he's the eighth prince of hell is what they say in that prayer at the end. And so it's like, why, and this is a demon, why would you believe that, I can just do this ritual, get possessed, or, possess somebody, and then we'll just do another one, he'll leave. It's like, why, I think there's only one way to get rid of demons, and it's certainly not through doing another ritual with them, right? It's kind of like, you thought he's gone, like, and it doesn't ever get into that, but I just think that's an aspect that I was just thinking of it. It's like, why it's kind of like, Jay Dyer talked about in was it Hellraiser? I think it was the first one where they try to, with the Cenobites, they try to make this pact with them, and they're basically, well, why would you trust us? Like, we're, obviously they're going to screw you over. So,
right.
Anyway, that was just, I can't remember the other thing, but that was the last thing.
I saw a bunch of, the guy saw a bunch of pot-bellied goblins, right? Just, right, putting hooks into people. Right. Yeah, you're going to end up, just nonsense. And he was like, oh, yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the nonsense. I agree with you. I think the nonsense language and the chaos is obviously definitely part of it, because it is chaos. And a good point that I heard today is that, that why would the hell demons speak the language of the humans, like, to them, unless they are asked to, or unless they're made to or conjured, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be the language of absolute in the darkness, away from the light of God by choice, right? It would be, that's why Crowley has this whole thing about backmasking and walking backwards, and doing everything backwards. Equivocation is the word I was thinking of. Like, there are outright lies, right? Like in the American Dad episode, where it's the rapture episode, when the Antichrist comes down. It's like, when you ask him a question, instead of saying, it's like, is it a sunny day? And you would say yes. He says no, right? And instead of like, like eating an ice cream cone, he's like, instead of I want an ice cream cone, he says like, cone cream want ice I. Everything's backwards. I put on my shoes the other way, and I put them on my hands because it's the opposite. So instead of that, it's like, it's actually chaos and degradation. And the movie shows that. The Witch also shows that, which is that the real thing with this, that the cult does, is, feeding on fear, confusion, death and lies and stink. And, they dig up the bodies or whatever, and they put them in the attic. By the way, watching this, like if you hear noise in your attic, after the stream is over, you're imagining it. Don't go check the attic. And if you do go check the attic, pull that ladder down and just go up there real fast. Don't go up slow, right? If you hear something in the other room, you don't go in slow. Hello, anybody there? No, you kick in the door.
You got to hit him with the element of surprise.
Yeah, kick in the door and wave the 4-4. Right. But yeah, it's a solid movie. I was not expecting it when I first saw it. It's rewatchable. It's got layers. And I think it's worth checking out. So yes, and also one more thing, the question about somebody, or you mentioned A24, and all their stuff, and I've explored that thing over the course of a couple streams now. I just did a member stream, by the way, on I Saw the TV Glow and Pearl, which are two newish A24 movies. I think that A24 is kind of, what's the term? Jumping the shark, or I don't know what's happening. Certainly their editing, their editors and editing department is like not doing things right, or maybe it's AI. I don't know what it is. This is like at the start of the arc of neo horror. But I think that their films are certainly unique, right? They did something with these two. I think that, the continuous repetition of these dark themes, like in every one of their movies, is obviously, that's obviously a top down. That's their MO, which gets certainly old. And it's like, Ari Aster, guess who's the bad guys in this one? Right. Oh, let me guess. But I think it's important with these two movies and a couple other ones. We did Spring Breakers. That's an A24 movie. That's an early A24. A24. That, it certainly conveys the ultra violence and the hyper reality and hyper rationale in the triple postmodern world, and the nihilism that's like inescapable with these, but you can't escape it, right? You can't escape it. So coming up soon on this channel, very soon, I don't know when, but soon, I'll be doing a wholesome stream, right? To counter, to balance out all this stuff. A wholesome movie stream. I'll be talking about, number one, I'm definitely doing Footloose, the original Footloose. I'm not sure what else. Maybe Babe. I have to go back and rewatch that and see if it's as wholesome as I remember it. That'll do, pig. It's weird, because the last time I heard that phrase was my doctor when I went in for a checkup. Right? He said, "Open your mouth and say oink." I thought that was rude. No, but I'll be doing Babe, probably, and a couple others. We'll see, but it'll be a wholesome stream. Footloose is totally wholesome. None of we're not going to have any of the dark shit, none of the Gnostic shit. It'll just be straight up, dancing in America, or whatever. Ernest, yeah, that's a good one. Ernest Goes to Camp. I just watched that like 2 days ago. Ernest Halloween, which I'll probably save for the actual spooky season, is like one of. How about a bumper sandwich, booger lips? Classic Ernest, best Halloween movie ever. Ernest, by the way, in real life was a Shakespearean actor. Did you know that? And yeah, so we'll see. Crispy says Saturday Night Fever. I don't know. Saturday Night Fever wholesome?
I've never seen it. I don't know.
They're dancing with those tight pants on. It can't be. Maybe we'll watch the movie Airplane, because that has a good Saturday Night Fever parody scene in it where they're dancing. All right, that's about it, you guys. Yeah, Ernest Scared Stupid is awesome. Maybe we'll throw that in. Oh yeah, it's super chats. Let's see if we got any. You guys, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah. I just noticed he sent in one.
Yeah, you still got time before the end of the stream if you want to send anything. I will be splitting this with Matty here. Let's see. Hey, yo, shouts out to Justin right there. He sent $20 via Cash App. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Really appreciate you. Let's see. Our homeboy, Jason the King here sent $20 via PayPal. Thank you so much. That is so awesome. Appreciate you so much. Jason, you are the best. Justin and Jason. Yo, Ethan sends, let's see, $13 for them boys. We them boys. We them boys. Hey, thank you so much on Cash App. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, you guys. Really appreciate y'all. Of course. So much. Let's see. Let's look at these super chats. See if I got anything here. Big time stream last night. If you guys saw Boiler Room last night, I was there till 2 a.m. They stayed on even longer than that. Recovering the Manchurian. This guy's a Manchurian candidate. My favorite part. That was an actual line that Trump used.
Oh, that was. I didn't see that part. That's that's funny.
Oh yeah.
Now your text makes a whole lot more sense last night.
Yeah. I forget what Biden said to make him say that, but he said, this guy's a Manchurian candidate. I went, whoa, we them boys. That was for us. Let's go. Shouts out to John Marks. I did not say haters and losers. I did not say that. Only to Rosie O'Donnell. Shouts out to, and also last night in my stream, had the Boiler Room crew, not Boiler Room crew, I had the Crucible crew raid the chat. That was big time. Shouts out to Andy and Rachel out there, Based Homeschool Mom, and Andy from the Crucible. Got a lot of support through that. Go back and watch my stream from last night. That was on the God's Lonely Man. That was the Paul Schrader stream on Taxi Driver and the Card Counter. Please check that out. Check out the Boiler Room appearances. I did one today just before this on TNT Radio Live with Hesher. You can always catch those. Usually Fridays, final segment or 7:20 Eastern. I think that is it. If you super chatted or I didn't get to you, forgive me, and I will get to you next time. And I will be splitting these with Matty. Thank you, Matty, so much. Really appreciate you. You are the best, as always. Thank you for being here and watching this movie. I kind of feel bad for putting you through this movie and not saying anything about what it was about. So
no, this was great. This is one I was kind of debating, like, do I want to watch this one again after the stream? Like, yeah, because there's going to be things I didn't pick up on the first time around. It's going to be one of those like Under the Silver Lake or something like that, where you pick up on new things every time you watch it. So definitely. Yeah. Thank you again for having me. This has been great. Really enjoyed this one. So this was, 3 hours of power. So
that's right.
This was a good one. Yeah. I got into
Friday night power hour.
There you go. I learned some new things. So this was good.
That's right. Okay. Last thing I'll say is, like Matty said, you watch this movie with some caution. We're all grown-ups, but watch it with some caution. If you feel like it, you shouldn't watch it, I wouldn't recommend it. We did it for you, or you can watch it if you want. Thank you to Matty. Everybody, please go to Digital Minefield Real Cooter Brown on YouTube. It is right there in the title. Please click on there. Please sub to him. Great material, great stuff. Always on point. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. 4th of July is coming up. Hope everybody has a great time out there and wholesome time. Listen to some music, chill, talk to your friends. Listen, was it worth it? Yeah, it was worth it if you're strong enough. All right. Peace. I love you guys. Peace.